Witching for love. Hazel Sparks squinted through a cloud of shimmering blue steam that curled up from the cauldron like mischievous ribbons. Somewhere behind the plume, a row of test tubes rattled as another batch of microthrusters, a blend of pixie dust and recycled drone parts, whirred to life without permission. She darted forward, yanked the power stone from its socket, and the thrusters fell silent, clattering onto a stack of half-burned notebooks. "Quincy, remind me to install a failsafe on the Mark IV boosters," Hazel muttered, pulling her curls into a frizzed bun. A smear of neon pink potion stained her cheek, glowing faintly in the dim lab light. A smooth, faintly sarcastic voice answered from a floating orb the size of a grapefruit. "Failsafe note logged. Though I doubt it will save the next unsuspecting ceiling tile from your enthusiasm." Hazel stuck her tongue out at the orb. "You worry too much. Innovation requires a little collateral damage." "It's only collateral if you survive it, Hazel Sparks," Quincy replied, bobbing around her shoulder. "And before you blow us both up, your rent is due in 3 days. Your landlord left 3 messages this morning." Hazel groaned and pushed a jar of moon-charged coffee beans aside. "Damian can wait. I am on the verge of fixing the entire local dating scene with one perfect potion." Quincy's cyan light pulsed with skepticism. "Last week you attempted to solve commuter rage with enchanted brownies and almost turned half the city into sleepwalkers." "They got plenty of rest, didn't they?" Hazel flashed a grin and turned back to the cauldron. A swirl of magenta and gold bubbled on the surface, sending affectionate pops of heart-shaped steam into the air. She hummed a tune from a vintage space opera soundtrack and measured a vial of quantum extract, an iridescent substance harvested from miniature wormholes she kept in the pantry. As she tipped the extract into the cauldron, the potion flared brilliant violet. It smelled like sun-warmed peaches and electric rain. Hazel's eyes widened. "Oh, this is new." Quincy floated a little farther away. "Define new. Implosive, explosive, or dimensionally unstable." "Romantically promising." Hazel reached for a quartz ladle. "Client wants an advanced attraction serum. Something subtle but effective. No instant obsession, just a nudge. We can't have anyone falling desperately in love with the first person they lay eyes on. That would be irresponsible." "To be clear," Quincy said, "your working definition of subtle requires a cauldron emitting neon hearts." "It's all about presentation," Hazel shot back. She dipped the ladle and let a few drops sizzle across a strip of enchanted parchment. The test sheet flared with swirling symbols, then settled into a soft rose glow, the universal sign for positive emotional resonance. Hazel pumped her fist. "Yes, see, the quantum infusion harmonized with the stardust chamomile." Quincy ran a diagnostic hum. "Chemical reading stable, emotional signature, 92% affection, 8% playful mischief." "Perfect ratio for a first date," Hazel said. She poured a sample into a flask shaped like a light bulb. The potion rippled as though alive. "Let's tag this version 41. She snagged a sticky note scribbled 41, slapped it onto the flask, and set it on a cooling rack beside a teetering tower of teacups. Then, with a flourish, she turned back to the cauldron, already plotting minor tweaks. "Maybe 1/2 gram more nebula dust." A sudden knock boomed through the lab's metal door, making Hazel jump. The cauldron burped violently, launching a bubble that burst against the rafters and left glittering residue. Hazel slapped her forehead with a gloved hand, smearing another stripe of glowing pink on her skin. "That cadence registers as Damien Slate, annoyed mode," Quincy noted. "Of course it does." Hazel hurried around scattered crates of spell components, waving away steam. "Stall him." "I'm an orb, Hazel, not a bouncer." She wiped her hands on her jumper, checked her reflection in a copper plate, smudged cheek, flyaway curls, safety goggles perched like an oversized headband, and sighed. Good enough. The door swung open before she could reach it. Damien Slate strode in, tailored charcoal suit crisp against the lab's mismatched clutter. His dark hair was slicked back, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass, Eyes the color of storm clouds surveyed the chaos with cold precision. "Afternoon, Miss Sparks," he said, voice low and unimpressed. "Your voicemail appears allergic to my calls." Hazel's heart slipped a gear. She straightened, lifting her chin. "Good afternoon, Mr. Slate. I've been busy innovating." "I gathered." He nudged a stack of gears with the toe of an Italian loafer. "Are you remodeling or detonating?" "Creative process," Hazel said brightly. "Can I help you with something?" She knew perfectly well why he was here, but she hoped brazen politeness might distract him. Damian produced a sleek tablet, swiped. 3 days until rent. My building policy explicitly prohibits combustible substances and unregistered technology, both of which are currently humming behind you. Quincy whispered in Hazel's ear module. "He means the illegal wormhole extractor in the corner." Hazel coughed. "Everything here is perfectly safe and legal within certain contextual allowances." Damian arched a brow. "Such as? Scientific progress?" She flashed a hopeful smile. "Would you like some coffee? I roasted the beans myself. Locally sourced, ethically enchanted." Damian sighed. "Coffee might help." He followed her toward a cluttered side bench where a vintage coffee pot whistled above a rune-inscribed hot plate. Hazel's pulse quickened. Hospitality, she reminded herself. Offer coffee, collect signature for temporary compliance waiver, escort him out before he notices. Well, everything. She rummaged for clean mugs. Behind her, Quincy whispered, "Your cauldron is exceeding recommended froth levels." Hazel glanced back. The potion now pulsed neon, teetering on a bubble verge. She muttered, 2 seconds. She snatched a small crystalline decanter of golden syrup from the shelf, her usual sweetener infusion, then pivoted, colliding with an open chest of enchanted marzipan. The impact rattled her nerves and the decanter slipped from her grip. With reflexes honed by years of dropping things, she lunged, catching the bottle, but her elbow knocked a nearby vial off the bench. The vial, containing the freshly scooped sample from the cauldron, spun in slow motion and landed with a plop into the decanter. Hazel stared at the swirling liquid. The syrup went from amber to glowing violet, fizzing quietly. Quincy's sensors flashed red. "Foreign substance detected." Hazel gulped. "Minor contamination, I'll fix it." Damian cleared his throat behind her. "Everything all right?" "Fine," Hazel squeaked. She poured 2 mugs of black coffee, her mind racing. She needed sweetener. Damian took 2 teaspoons she remembered from last month's tense rent negotiation. The syrup bottle in her hand shimmered like a jewel, as though daring her. She hastily unscrewed the cap and filled a teaspoon. The potion-tainted syrup clung with a thick, dazzling sheen. Hazel hesitated. Surely a single teaspoon couldn't. The cauldron belched again, jolting her arm. A big purple droplet splashed onto her boot. Acting entirely on panicked instinct, she tipped the spoonful into Damian's cup and stirred. The coffee turned a pleasant caramel shade, hiding the glow. She shoved the mug toward him. "Here, careful, it's hot." Damian accepted it warily. "Thank you." He lifted it, inhaled. "Smells bright." Hazel forced a smile that felt like a grimace. Organic citrus notes. As he lifted the cup to his lips, Hazel's stomach twisted. Maybe the potion had diluted in the syrup, maybe. Damian took a generous sip. 1 swallow. 2. He set the mug down, exhaled softly. A curious warmth crept up his cheeks. He blinked, frowning, as though his contact lenses had fogged. Hazel wiped her palms on her jumper. Damian opened his mouth, then closed it, gaze sharpening on Hazel's face. "Your eyes," he murmured, voice suddenly softer. "They're remarkable." Hazel's breath hitched. This was new. Damien Slate never complimented anyone, least of all her. He blinked again, a slow smile spreading, unexpectedly gentle, almost boyish. Like galaxies of molten copper. Quincy's orb flickered alarm. "Hazel, potion effect detected. Phase 1. Affection. 99% probability. Hazel stared at Damian, heat blooming in her own cheeks. Mr. Slate? Damian. He stepped closer, gaze locked on Hazel with fervent intensity. Please call me Damian. Hazel's pulse pounded. The potion should take minutes to manifest full effect, but apparently syrup was an efficient carrier. Damian, she squeaked. Are you feeling all right? I feel... He reached out as though to brush a strand of hair from her face, but stopped, hands trembling slightly. I feel like I've been wandering in grayscale until this moment, and now you're the only color. Hazel nearly melted into the floor. Oh no, she whispered. Damian's smile broadened. Oh yes. He looked around the lab with newfound wonder. All these inventions, these beautiful disasters, they're reflections of your brilliance. I see it now. You're extraordinary. Quincy bobbed frantically, projecting a private text across Hazel's retina implant. Potion effect escalating. Suggest immediate containment. Hazel swallowed hard. Damian, that's very kind, but... He picked up a delicate glass coil from the bench, one of her imperfect prototypes, and cradled it as though it were a priceless artifact. Look at this craftsmanship. He turned shining eyes on her. You deserve the world's admiration. I'm ashamed I ever doubted you. Hazel backed toward the cauldron, knocking over a stack of rune-etched spoons. They clattered like cymbals. It's fine, really. You're not yourself. I'm more myself than ever. He released the coil and reached for her hand. Hazel yelped and sidestepped, sending a tray of dried starflower petals skidding. The blossoms burst upward in a fragrant cloud. Damian inhaled blissfully. Quincy whispered, We have approximately 1 minute before phase 2. Devotion. Devotion? Hazel whispered back. Pronounced declarations. Potential kneeling. Hazel's mind spiraled. She had to brew an antidote, find the right reversal compound. But that meant time, and Damian wasn't exactly patient even when not under a love spell. She pressed a flask into his hands. Hold this! He gazed at the empty glass like it contained moonlight. Anything for you. Hazel darted past him, heart hammering. Potions rack, antidotes, neutralizers. But everything was unlabeled because she'd run out of sticky notes. She groaned. Behind her, Damian spoke, voice dreamy. Hazel, did you know your laughter sounds like comets colliding? Soft yet spectacular. Hazel grabbed 3 vials at random. Too risky. She needed the precise formula. 9 drops of dragon's breath. Pinch of anti-aimer dust. A grounding focus of... Her notes were buried under a pile of failed prototypes. Damian's footsteps followed. Please allow me to assist. He bent to pick up a spilled box of shimmering screws, oblivious to the way they stuck to his suit. Your genius shouldn't be wasted on cleanup. Hazel stared at him, struck by the earnestness in his eyes. For a moment, she saw the man behind the brusque emails and stiff handshakes. Someone lonely, maybe. Someone who'd built walls so high even he couldn't see over them. She shook her head. Potion, Hazel. Focus. She spun and bumped straight into the cauldron. The potion sloshed, splattering her sleeve. Damian lunged, steadying the cauldron with surprising grace. Careful, he murmured. You mustn't hurt yourself. Hazel's pulse skipped. He was so close she could smell his cologne mingling with the potion's peach electric scent. Her brain insisted this was chemical compulsion, but her traitor heart squeezed anyway. She stepped back, cleared her throat. Thank you, I have to run a safety protocol. Could you sit over there? Away from hot surfaces. Damian nodded solemnly as if she'd asked him to guard the crown jewels. He perched on a battered stool, hands resting politely on his knees, watching her like she was sunrise. Hazel clutched a notebook to her chest. Quincy hovered near, his blue glow dimmed with worry. She drew a shaky breath, realizing the disaster was just beginning. Hazel paced the length of the lab, clutching her notebook so tightly her knuckles blanched. Pages fluttered where they had come loose from the binding, scrawled with half-legible potion recipes and urgent margin doodles of tiny hearts inside danger signs. Quincy stayed close, projecting quiet reminders into her earpiece. Phase 2 has stabilized, he murmured. Devotion intensity, moderate. We've bought time, but a reversal solution remains essential. I know, Hazel whispered. I just need to find the right counteragent before Phase 3. Phase 3? Damian prompted from his stool, alert as a loyal guard dog. What's Phase 3, my brilliant alchemist? Hazel winced. She'd been hoping he wasn't listening. Just lab jargon. You should rest while I, calibrate the thing. Damian rose at once. If you need me to fetch equipment, stir mixtures, parse spreadsheets of quantum flux data, I'm at your disposal. He hesitated, straightening his tie, though it had long since acquired flecks of glitter and one stubborn petal. Actually, even if you don't need me, I'd prefer to stay within eyesight. Hazel sidestepped a stack of crystal beakers. You really don't have to do that. I do, he said simply, and there was such sincerity in his voice that Hazel's chest tightened. She exhaled and turned toward her ingredients cabinet, an imposing iron armoire marked with scorch marks from an incident she refused to discuss. If she could locate dragon's breath powder and anti-aimer dust, she could brew a neutralizing draft. But those were expensive imports. She normally stored them at the back for safety. Quincy glowed. Top shelf, third jar from the left for dragon's breath. Second shelf, violet tin marked XOX for anti-pheromone crystals. Got it, Hazel muttered, reaching upward. The jar was heavy and her goggles threatened to slip off. She balanced on tiptoe, fingers brushing glass. Damian appeared behind her, tall and steady. Allow me. His hand covered hers, warm, steady, and he easily plucked the jar free, offering it like a priceless relic. Hazel's breath caught. She accepted it, brushing against his fingers. Sparks, literal sparks, crackled between their palms. The potion's influence clearly had side effects even through skin contact. Damian blinked at the miniature lightning, then smiled in wonder. We make quite the team. Hazel swallowed. Yes, thank you. She pivoted, feeling heat flush her cheeks. Focus. Antidote. Focus. She set the jar down at her brew station and measured a precise spoonful into a small crucible. Next came the anti-amour dust. She rooted through tins until she found the violet one. When she pried it open, she discovered it was half empty. Quincy read her expression. Insufficient quantity. You used most of it last month during that awkward engagement party disaster. Hazel groaned. Right. The couple who only wanted to like each other a little bit. Damian leaned over, eyebrows knit in gentle concern. Is something wrong? I'm short on a key ingredient, she admitted, but I can improvise. Tell me what you need, I'll acquire it. Damian whipped out his phone. Expedited delivery, drone drop, whatever it takes. Name your price. Hazel laughed weakly. Unless you know a supplier of ethically sourced chimera scales within 15 minutes, improvisation is faster. Damian started tapping anyway. Challenge accepted. Hazel felt a ridiculous warmth at his determination but pushed it aside. She rummaged for a substitute. Maybe crystallized sage hearts could mimic anti-amour properties. She tossed a pinch into the crucible. A plume of green smoke puffed and left behind a scent of mint and ozone. Promising? Quincy asked. Not ideal, Hazel muttered. But maybe if I bind it with a stable element. She reached for a vial of lunar salt and uncorked it. Before she could add a grain, the cauldron coughed across the room, belching violet foam that slithered down the sides like frosting. Damian startled. Your main batch is overflowing. Hazel sprinted. No. Together they clamped the lid, but a bubble escaped and burst over Damian's shoulder, splattering his suit with tiny glowing hearts. He barely noticed, eyes fixed on Hazel as they worked in tandem to secure the cauldron clamps. Remarkable reflexes, he breathed. You're extraordinary. Hazel bit back a flustered grin. I'm extraordinarily messy. The mess is part of your genius. He wiped a smear of potion from her cheek with a handkerchief, then pressed the fabric to his chest like a keepsake. Hazel's knees wobbled. This was getting dangerous, for both of them. She forced herself to step away. Quincy, monitor heat levels. Damian, maybe you could, organize those parchment scraps? He lit up. Gladly. He gathered shredded drawings, shards of crystal pens, and stray screws, arranging them into tidy piles that spelled out Hazel in block letters. He looked up, cheeks flushed with pride. Hazel's heart pinged. She shook off the feeling and poured the half-formed antidote mixture into a beaker. The liquid shimmered silver green. Quincy, diagnostic. 80% neutralizing potential, the orb said. Side effects unknown without proper catalyst. I need a grounding focus, Hazel mused. Something emotionally neutral but magically conductive. Quartz? Titanium filament? No. A knock came from the doorway again, rapid and impatient. Hazel flinched. Damian squared his shoulders in protective mode. The door creaked and a petite woman with steel-gray hair and rainbow spectacles popped her head in. Hazel Sparks, you're late for neighborhood council again. The male golems are refusing to deliver past your anti-gravity field. Her eyes landed on Damian, whose suit practically glowed with potion residue. And who might this dazzling gentleman be? Hazel forced a strained smile. Hi, Mrs. Maribel. This is Damian, my landlord. Damian strode over, offering a hand. Pleasure to meet you. Hazel is an unparalleled asset to this community. Mrs. Maribel blushed like a schoolgirl. Well, aren't you charming? Hazel, dear, bring him to the next potluck. We could use more handsome faces. Hazel spluttered. Actually, we're in the middle of a critical breakthrough, Damian supplied, eyes shining. She's on the cusp of transformative work. Mrs. Maribel clapped. I expect fireworks then. She winked at Hazel and bobbed out. The door shut, leaving Hazel's ears ringing. Damian smiled at her with open adoration. They respect you. They should. You're incredible. Hazel pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. I need 5 minutes to think. Damian's expression sobered into gentle concern. Of course, I'll be quiet as snowfall. He moved to a corner stool and sat, hands folded like a devout apprentice. Quincy hovered at Hazel's shoulder. I detect elevated cardiac activity. Yours, not his. I'm fine, Hazel whispered. You're developing feelings, Quincy noted. Hazel glared. Irrelevant right now. Emotion complicates rational thought but also increases innovation potential by 17%, Quincy said. You may leverage affection to refine your antidote strategy. Hazel nearly laughed. I'll pass on your scientific romance tips. She stared into the silver-green mixture swirling in the beaker. The color reminded her of Damian's eyes, stormy, thoughtful, unexpectedly gentle. She shook off that thought. She located a small quartz prism from her drawer and balanced it on top of the beaker as a focus. A faint glimmer traveled down the prism and into the liquid. The silver-green swirled, then brightened to teal. Diagnostic? Hazel asked. 90% neutralization, Quincy replied. Progress. She uncorked a slim vial of phoenix ash, volatile but stabilizing in tiny doses. She added a single grain. The mixture hissed and went clear. Damian spoke softly from across the room. Look at you problem-solving under pressure. You're radiant. Hazel flushed. Just chemistry. Chemistry is miraculous, he said. Just like you. Her pulse thudded. She capped the neutralizer and breathed. One final step. Infusion with intent. Reversal potions needed emotional clarity from the brewer. She had to visualize a world where Damian's feelings returned to normal. Except that meant picturing him indifferent again, back to crisp emails and curt rent reminders. She tightened her grip on the vial. Could she do that? Quincy sensed her hesitation. Intent calibration required. Purge personal bias for optimal potency. Hazel inhaled, envisioning Damien scolding her about zoning codes, frowning at orbital thruster failures. Oddly, the image pinched her heart. She shook her head and tried again, focusing on fairness. He deserved real choice, real emotions, not chemical compulsion. The liquid glowed pale blue, signaling completion. Hazel sighed with relief. "It's finished?" Damien asked, standing. Hazel tucked the vial into her pocket. "Almost. I need to let it settle." She forced a smile. "Thank you for being patient." "I would wait an eternity for you," he said, as though that were the most obvious truth in the cosmos. Hazel's resolve wavered, but the longer she delayed, the stronger the potion's imprint on Damien's psyche would become. She couldn't let that happen. A loud pop sounded near the cauldron. Hazel and Damien turned as a violet foam geyser erupted, splashing the ceiling. Droplets rained down like glitter grenades. Quincy alarmed. "Main batch nearing saturation, risk of love aerosol dispersion." "Love aerosol?" Hazel squeaked. "Airborne enchantment," Quincy clarified. "If released, entire building occupants could develop random infatuations." Hazel felt the floor tilt. "We have to contain it now." Damien sprang into action. "Tell me how to help." Hazel grabbed a giant copper lid and shoved it into Damien's arms. "Hold this over the vent while I drop the temperature." He nodded, determined. They lunged toward the cauldron. Foam spewed, splattering Hazel's goggles. She vaulted onto a stool, flipping a switch on the cryo coil. A gust of frigid vapor burst around them, frosting glass jars, chilling skin. Damien clamped the vent, muscles straining. Hazel steadied the lid, slipping her fingers beneath his to press it flat. Their hands locked. Frost dusted their knuckles. Hazel felt his pulse thrumming under her touch. "For you," Damien said through chattering teeth, "I would freeze the sun." Hazel's laugh came out half sob, half giggle. Together they sealed the vent. Quincy reported a safe drop in pressure. Foam subsided, leaving a glossy purple crust inside the cauldron. They stood, breaths puffing, faces inches apart. Hazel realized her goggles had slipped, leaving her eyes bare. Damien's gaze mapped every freckle on her cheeks. Frost melted between their palms, sliding warmth back into her fingers. Quincy cleared his sonic throat. "System stable. Suggest disengaging prolonged physical contact to prevent fogging of interpersonal boundaries." Hazel jerked her hand back. "Thanks, Quincy." Damien lowered the lid, still watching her with tenderness that made her stomach flip. "You saved the building. You're amazing." "So are you," she blurted, then regretted it. He was under a potion. Compliments only fed the fire. His smile turned shy, a look she'd never imagined him capable of. "I want to earn that praise without magic." Hazel swallowed hard. "We'll talk." Quincy dimmed his glow to a soft ember while Hazel and Damien caught their breath amid the frosted lab. The quiet that followed felt oddly intimate, broken only by the faint hum of cooling fans and the tick of thermal glass contracting. Hazel's adrenaline ebbed, leaving her head light and her heart skittish. She still held the antidote vial in her pocket. Every brush of the glass against her hip reminded her of the choice she hadn't made. Damien's gaze never left her. "You handled that crisis like a conductor leading a cosmic symphony." Hazel cleared her throat, ducking behind the brew station to hide her blush. "Let's try crisis-free for the rest of the afternoon." She busied herself wiping violet goo from a funnel, though most of it had already dried into sparkly scales. Damien rounded the table and handed her a towel that smelled faintly of cedar. He'd found the clean linens she never managed to sort. "Here," he murmured. "Thank you," she said, surprised by the gentleness of his tone. She reached for the towel. Their fingers overlapped again. Tiny pulses of warmth leaped between them. This time she didn't pull away immediately. She let it linger, just long enough to feel what it might be like if this were real. Quincy chose that moment to inject pragmatism. Reminder: Phase 3 will initiate if emotional stimulus increases. Estimated time window before escalation, approximately 40 minutes. Hazel stepped back and composed herself. Right. We need to sterilize the cauldron before any residual potion ferments and reinflates. Give me instructions, Damian said, rolling up his immaculate sleeves. Iridescent potion dust gleamed on the cufflinks. The juxtaposition of boardroom polish and magical fallout was unfairly attractive. Hazel gestured to a pair of thick gloves, heat-resistant, and those tongs. Damian slipped on the gloves, then used the tongs to lift the crusted lid. Violet flakes fluttered like miniature moths. He carried the lid to a sink of enchanted steam, dunked and scrubbed with a copper brush. Hazel watched, half appalled that a billionaire landlord was cleaning her lab equipment, and half mesmerized by how earnestly he did it. She grabbed a large crystal decanter and filled it with cooling solution, melted snow, lunar salt, and a whisper of time-dilated water she'd borrowed from a fountain in Prague. She poured it over the cauldron's rim. Steam hissed, flushing residue down the drain pipe that fed directly into her garden. Another questionable choice Damian would have lectured her about on any ordinary day. Butterflies, Damian whispered suddenly, eyes fixed on the swirling steam. Hazel frowned. What about them? When I was 8, he said, voice soft and distant, I raised a monarch caterpillar in a shoebox, watched it emerge, wings wet and trembling. I felt free, I suppose, like I could do anything. He met her eyes. That feeling returned just now, when you poured that solution. I can't remember the last time I felt it. Hazel's chest tightened. The potion exaggerated affection, but it couldn't invent memories. That confession was him, not chemistry. She handed him a fresh rinse potion and tried to sound casual. Maybe you should chase that feeling more often. Monarch butterflies are still around. Maybe I should chase something else, Damian said, eyes locked on her. She looked away, heart pounding. Quincy status. Cauldron 90% sanitized. Residual enchantment dropping to safe values. No aerosol threat detected. Good, Hazel said, forcing a professional tone. We're nearly out of the woods. And the antidote? Quincy asked in a lowered volume that Damian wouldn't notice. Hazel's hand drifted to her pocket. Soon? Damian finished scrubbing and set the lid upside down to dry. He tugged off the gloves. What next? We, let the lab air out, Hazel said. Then maybe lunch? You should eat something that's not infused with volatile affection compounds. Damian's expression brightened like dawn over a city skyline. Lunch sounds perfect. I'll cook. Hazel nearly choked. You cook? He nodded, sheepish. I took culinary classes in grad school. Stress relief. There's a local grocer 2 blocks over. I can pick up ingredients. The idea of Damien Slate wandering the neighborhood grocery store covered in potion glitter felt at once disastrous and delightful. Hazel glanced at his suit. A dusting of violet hearts shimmered on his lapel like boutique embroidery. Maybe I should go with you, help you blend in. Damian's smile went luminous. A date, then? Hazel fumbled. Not exactly, a field trip for produce. Damian accepted this with an affectionate grin. Produce date. Quincy flickered overhead. Hazel transporting him through public spaces increases risk of cross-contamination and public incidents of spontaneous sonnet writing. Hazel winced. True, let's postpone produce. I think I have instant noodles. She rummaged through a cabinet and pulled out a packet of Stardust miso ramen. Gourmet enough? Damian approached, took the packet, and turned it over in his hands like rare treasure. If it nourishes you, it's gourmet. Hazel's pulse skipped again. She handed him a kettle and directed him to the induction plate. He filled it with purified rainwater from a jug marked with yesterday's date. The domesticity of the moment, Damian humming under his breath while waiting for water to boil, felt surreal. Hazel perched on a stool, staring at him as though he might vanish when the potion wore off. Something fluttered in her pocket, the antidote vial warming against her body. She pulled it out and studied the shimmering solution. Blue-white sparkles drifted inside like snowfall in reverse. One swallow and Damien's enchantment would fade. He might glare at her, demand explanations, triple her rent. Or worse, he might remember how he felt right now and be mortified. But if she didn't give it to him soon, the potion's bond would deepen, latching onto neurochemical pathways until separating affection from reality became risky. Quincy had run simulations. After 4 hours, memory blending could occur, leaving him permanently infatuated whenever he recalled her face. Hazel bit her lip. She stood crossed to the tea shelf and lifted a ceramic mug shaped like a cat. She poured the antidote inside, diluted it with rosehip tea to mask the flavor, and placed it on the counter. Damian turned as the kettle clicked off. Tea? Just a blend to complement ramen, Hazel said. Technically true. Try a sip. He lifted the mug, inhaled steam. Smells like summer gardens. He tilted it toward his lips. Hazel's hands tightened on the countertop. She could have pulled the mug away, but she didn't. She watched, breath held, as he took one cautious sip. The antidote should take effect within minutes. Damien closed his eyes, savoring. Delicious. He sipped again, deeper this time, and set the mug down. His brows drew together, confusion flickering. Hazel backed a step. Everything all right? I feel... He pressed fingers to his temple. Dizzy, like leaving a dream too quickly. He looked at her, eyes turbulent. Hazel? A pang hit her chest. Just breathe. It's probably the steam. He nodded, though uncertainty shadowed his face. Hazel filled the ramen bowls with boiling water, stirring to avoid meeting his gaze. She sprinkled nebula scallions over the surface. The noodles glowed faintly, absorbing starlight salt. Damien steadied himself on the counter. I keep thinking, I need to tell you something, but the words keep slipping. Hazel forced a gentle smile. Eat first. Talk after. They carried bowls to a small table improvised from an old spell lattice, each taking a crate box as a seat. They slurped in unison. The ramen tasted of miso and galaxies. Damien set his spoon down, shoulders relaxing. This is surprisingly good. Instant brilliance, Hazel said softly. A fragile silence settled. Hazel tested the conversation waters. You know, you never told me why you decided to buy half the city block and convert it into mixed-use tech space. Damien toyed with his spoon. Because I grew up down the street in a building that leaked whenever it rained. I promised myself I'd return and fix the neighborhood. Hazel's heart squeezed. That's really nice of you. He shrugged, still looking distant. Maybe, but I pushed out low-income tenants in the process. Can't decide if I'm heroic or hypocrite. I think you're human, Hazel said. Humans mess up. Then they learn. That counts. He studied her, the conflict in his eyes softening. The antidote was working. She could see walls reforming behind his gaze. But there remained a glow, gentle and curious, that felt real. She braced for the moment anger replaced that glow. Instead, Damien asked, How did you get into potions and quantum tinkering? Hazel blinked. You want to know? She rarely shared her origin story. Most people either mocked it or exploited it. He nodded. If you're willing. She took a breath. I grew up traveling Renaissance fairs with my mom. She did stage magic. I sold herbal remedies at her booth. One summer, a tech convention shared the fairgrounds. I wandered into a VR demo, saw code visualized as colored particles and thought, this looks like spell work. So I started combining real physics with magic theory. Turns out you can hack reality if you feed it the right variables. Damien listened, elbows on knees, bowl forgotten. That's incredible. It's messy, Hazel corrected, glancing around at the disaster zone. But it's mine. I admire it, he said, and she believed him. Maybe admiration didn't need potion prompts. Quincy hovered closer. Antidote assimilation at 40%, he whispered. Hazel tensed. Damian rubbed his forehead again. Sorry, my head's spinning. Lie down, Hazel suggested, guiding him to a worn couch tucked behind a stack of enchanted monitors. He sank onto the cushions with a sigh. Hazel perched on the armrest, offering a cool cloth infused with clarity petals. He pressed it to his eyes. If this is what love feels like, he murmured, voice muffled. No wonder poets go mad. Hazel managed a weak laugh. It's not always this intense. He lowered the cloth. Have you? His breath hitched as though the question itself tangled. Have you been in love? Hazel's pulse stuttered. Oh, once maybe. College lab partner. But it fizzled. Damien's eyes softened and something genuine, unfiltered shone through. Whoever it was, they were a fool to let you go. She swallowed hard. The couch springs creaked as he sat up. He reached for her hand. She hesitated, then let him take it. His palm was warm. Hers trembled. Hazel opened her mouth to tell him what she'd done, but footsteps echoed in the hallway. The lab door flew open again, this time revealing a lanky teen in a neon courier jacket balancing a stack of packages. Delivery for Sparks Laboratories, the teen announced, puzzled expression drifting between Damien's glittery suit and Hazel's potion-stained lab coat. Sign here? Damien jumped up, commandeering the clipboard. I've got it. He scrawled an elegant signature. Hazel noted he wrote her name, not his. The courier gawked at Damien's sparkling suit. Cool costume party? Every day, Hazel replied. She accepted the packages, mostly rare reagents and one giant box stamped with a drone shipping logo. She hefted the big box onto a table. I didn't order this. Damien's phone chimed. He checked it. I think that's from me. Emergency order chimera scales. Hazel gaped. You actually found them? Paid a fortune, he said with an easy shrug. Worth every credit if it helps you. Her heart thumped. The antidote completed step by step inside him, but he still prioritized her needs. Maybe affection lingered beyond potion pathways. Quincy nudged Hazel. Assimilation 70%, emotional resync imminent. She set the boxes aside. Damien, can we talk? Anything, he said. She led him back to the brew station where sunlight now filtered through a cracked skylight, illuminating dust motes. I have to confess something. That coffee earlier. He tilted his head, listening with open trust. Her throat tightened. She couldn't choke now. I might have slipped up with the ingredients. There was a potion, an attraction potion. It contaminated your drink. Damien's brow furrowed, but he didn't pull away. You mean a love potion? She nodded. I didn't do it on purpose. It was chaos, but it affected you. That's why you've been like this. He processed, pressing fingertips together. Quincy helpfully displayed a silent bar graph of honesty metrics, but Hazel ignored it. Damien took a breath. You gave me an antidote in the tea, didn't you? Hazel's eyes widened. You realized? I tasted something metallic. He managed a faint smile. Figured you were fixing the problem. It should clear everything soon, she whispered. You might feel disoriented, maybe embarrassed. I understand if you're angry. He studied her sober. Angry? No. Confused, yes. He flexed his hand as if testing whether feelings still tingled in his fingertips. Some moments seemed exaggerated, but they came from somewhere real. You didn't fake my memories. You amplified feelings already there. Hazel swallowed. You had feelings before? He inhaled, meeting her gaze. I admired you. Your brilliance. Your stubborn independence. I just buried it under property codes and spreadsheets. Quincy chimed in. Assimilation 95%. Residual compulsion, negligible. Damien exhaled. So what I feel right now, maybe it's not potion anymore. Hazel's heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. How can we tell? He stepped closer. Let's attempt an experiment. Pure honesty, no magic. She nodded, barely breathing. I like the way you talk to machines like they're people, he said. I like that you paint galaxies on coffee mugs and forget rent because you're busy saving hearts. I like how your curls frame your eyes when you push your goggles up. Hazel's voice trembled. Damian. And he went on softer. I like how my name sounds when you say it. Hazel felt tears prick. I like you too. Even when you're scowling about fire codes. Especially then, actually. He laughed, the sound low and genuine. May I? He lifted a hand, asking permission. She nodded. His palm cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a fleck of dried glitter. Quincy rotated, capturing the moment in silent observation. Compulsion nullified, he announced softly. Damian's eyes glistened. Then this is me. He leaned in but paused a fraction from her lips. Hazel Sparks, if you'll have me, I intend to devote myself to supporting your brilliance forever. In love, in chaos, in overdue rent. All of it. Hazel's breath hitched. The words matched the prophecy of Phase 3, but they were spoken by a man free from enchantment. Emotion swelled like a tidal moon inside her chest. She pressed a shaking hand against his chest, feeling the steady drum of his heartbeat. Her other hand slipped to the countertop where her favorite spellbook lay under a tangle of copper wire. She clutched it, anchoring herself to something solid, and managed a half laugh, half sob. I really screwed this up, she whispered into the hush, voice trembling with relief, wonder, and the dizzy promise of everything to come. Hazel woke to a flurry of sizzling sounds and the unmistakable scent of cinnamon orange pancakes. For a few precious seconds, she lay still in bed, eyes half closed, marveling at how sunlight streamed through the stained glass skylight above her room. Warm color shards danced across her quilt as though the universe had decided to throw confetti. Then reality tumbled back. Damien Slate was still here. And if her nose could be trusted, he'd discovered glitter somewhere in the pantry. She shoved back the covers, swung her feet onto the mismatched floorboards, and padded toward the kitchen alcove. Halfway down the hall, she heard Quincy's subdued digital sigh followed by Damien's bright whistling hum. Hazel braced herself and stepped into the chaos. Damien stood at the stove wearing an apron that shimmered every shade of the rainbow. Across the chest, swirling gold letters declared, Hazel Sparks Superfan. Glitter puffed off the fabric each time he flipped a pancake. A small enchanted whisk circled a bowl on its own, whipping batter that sparkled pink. A line of blueberries hovered in single-file formation, waiting their turn to dive onto the griddle. Quincy floated overhead, pulsing a cautionary deep blue. Good morning, Hazel. Your boyfriend has appropriated your spice rack. Damien turned, face lighting up. A speck of flour dusted the tip of his nose. You're awake. Perfect timing. I was just perfecting the cinnamon ratio. He offered her a plate loaded with heart-shaped pancakes drizzled in violet syrup. Breakfast for the brightest witch I know. Hazel accepted the plate automatically. Damien, where did that apron come from? I ordered it last night, rush delivery. He motioned to the sparkling hem. I might have added a glitter enchantment because, well, everything about you deserves sparkle. Quincy piped up, Hazel, I have already vacuumed the floor twice. Glitter saturation is reaching unacceptable levels. Hazel bit back a laugh and turned to Damien. I appreciate the gesture, but you don't need to wait on me hand and foot. He looked wounded. I want to. Let me make your day easier. He gestured to the hovering blueberries. One by one, they spell-formed the word, good morning midair, before popping into her mouth. She chewed, equal parts amused and alarmed. She swallowed. Okay. Rule number 1 for today. No edible messages until after coffee. Damien grinned. Understood. Coffee is brewing. I recalibrated your Java rune so it grinds the beans at a lunar synced tempo. I believe the flavor profile should be smoother now. Quincy's iris glowed. Translation, he adjusted equipment without logging a safety ticket. Hazel sighed, though the scent of brewing coffee did smell divine. She carried her breakfast to the cozy alcove table, crafted from a repurposed potion crate, and sat facing Damian's back as he plated another pancake. "Did you even sleep?" she asked. "Briefly," he said, "but I kept thinking of ways to be useful. I read 3 of your spell journals. Fascinating methodologies." Hazel choked on syrup. "You read my journals?" "Only the last year," he said. "And I reorganized them alphabetically by primary herb used." Quincy's voice came low in Hazel's ear. "Your private notes on intent resonance theory are now sorted under B for basil because of that pesto charm you tried." Hazel pressed her palm over her face. "Damian, I have my own system." "And it's brilliant," he insisted, sliding a fresh stack of pancakes beside her. "But now it's easier to navigate. Efficiency increases innovation. I'm here to amplify your genius." Hazel's pulse skittered. He still sounded utterly sincere. Too sincere. She speared a fluffy heart with her fork, chewing while she formed a plan for the day, finished delayed client orders, test antidote permutations, and somehow get Damian to sit still long enough for observation. She swallowed. "We'll work out the new filing system later. Right now I need to handle some potion requests." "I'm ready." Damian grabbed a notebook and a pen that emitted tiny sparks, her enchanted pen that jotted ideas as soon as she spoke them. It scribbled, "Helping Damian. Love," across the margin. Hazel swiped it away. "Maybe start with something low risk," she suggested. "Like inventory." His eyes sparkled. "Absolutely." Quincy projected a private text window. "Warning. Untrained human plus inventory =, potential matchstick factory." Hazel ignored the dread curling in her stomach and ushered Damian toward the lab. The sunlit chaos of yesterday had cooled overnight, but potion residue still gleamed on countertops. Damian inhaled like he'd never smelled anything better. She handed him a clipboard. "Okay, count these vials of bluebell essence. Do not open them. Just count." "Yes, ma'am," Damian said with mock salute. He set to work, eyes shining. Hazel pulled on her goggles. She needed to brew a mild focus elixir for a client who claimed her concentration was fractured by interdimensional gossip, normally a routine mix, until Damian sneezed. Startled, Hazel jerked her hand. 2 drops of starroot concentrate splashed into the cauldron. The brew hissed and emitted lavender smoke that coalesced into tiny gossiping faces. They giggled insults at Hazel's hair. Damian hurried over. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Hazel said through clenched teeth while she evaporated the laughing vapor with a wave of her wand. "Lab rule. Sneeze outside." "Noted." He produced a lace handkerchief. "Sorry, the bluebell essence tickles." Hazel exhaled. No harm done. But as she turned back to the cauldron, Quincy's light flickered red. The condensation from Damian's sneeze had reacted with the essence on the bench. The vials now hummed ominously. Before Hazel could intervene, a cork popped. Bluebell vapor spilled upward, twisting into glowing butterflies that flitted around the room. Damian's face lit up. "Beautiful." Hazel snatched a net, chasing the butterflies before they burrowed into equipment. One dove toward the open window. Another landed on Damian's sleeve, leaving shimmering pollen. He watched Hazel scramble, brow furrowed. "Should I help?" "Just stay still," Hazel puffed, netting a pair mid-flight. She captured the last one with a grin of triumph. Right as her heel slid on stray glitter, she tipped backward. Damian lunged, catching her around the waist. The net clattered to the floor. Hazel found herself pressed against him, their breaths mingling, glitter dust swirling like a slow-motion snow globe. His eyes searched hers. Soft, adoring, painfully sincere. "Saved you," he whispered. Hazel's cheeks warmed. "Thanks." She tried to steady herself, but his arms stayed firm, as though he had no intention of letting go. Her heart hammered. Every logical cell yelled that this was potion-induced, but the chemical reaction in her chest felt terrifyingly real. Quincy's voice intruded. Butterflies contained, but emotional butterfly effect intensifying. Suggest stepping back. Hazel gently eased away. We, should sanitize those vials before they leak again. Damian nodded, though his gaze lingered on her lips before he forced himself back to the workbench. 2 hours later, Hazel reviewed her progress. She'd filled 3 customer orders despite Damian accidentally swapping labels on dragonfang dust and sugar crystals. Disaster averted at the last second, and overwatering her mystic mint until the pot tried to slither off the table. Through it all, he remained an eager puppy, trailing her with compliments and suggestions. Maybe install color-coded shelves by potency? He offered, holding a sticky note diagram he'd drafted. Hazel massaged her temples. Maybe later. She needed quiet, somewhere Damian wouldn't follow. She slipped into her greenhouse annex, an atrium of curved glass appended to the lab. Inside, warm sunlight filtered through vines of dreamroot and mistleaf. Petals released a faint hum, lulling anxieties. Hazel shut the door behind her, breathing deep. Quincy followed, hovering at head height. His glow dimmed to a calm teal. You needed escape. I needed clarity, she murmured, brushing a leaf. He's sweet, he's helpful, but it's not him. At least, maybe not all him. Quincy rotated. Observation, you enjoy his presence. Too much, Hazel confessed. Part of me wishes I could freeze time right here. But if it's just the potion, then it's fake. And that's not fair. Correct, Quincy said, but emotional entanglement prevents objective action. She slid onto a moss-covered bench. I tried to fix it. I thought the antidote worked. Data suggests otherwise, Quincy said. We need further testing. Hazel sighed, scrubbing her hands over her eyes. Then I'll prepare a stronger dose tonight. I'll watch him drink it for real. And if his feelings vanish? Quincy asked gently. She swallowed hard. Then we move on. Silence stretched, broken by distant clinks from the lab. Hazel closed her eyes. A soft whoosh sounded behind her. She opened them to see the greenhouse door drift open of its own accord. Damian stood there, arms loaded with a basket of supplies and a folded quilt that sparkled with embedded starlight threads. Sorry to interrupt, he said, voice tender. You looked like you needed a breather, so I... He stepped inside, the dreamroot vines parting respectfully. I thought maybe we could picnic. Hazel blinked. In here? Why not? He gestured upward. The glass dome reflected the midday sun in prismatic hues. It's beautiful. And I found your floating lantern spell, figured out the casting gesture. Before Hazel could respond, he flicked his wrist. Tiny paper lanterns uncurled from the basket, levitating to the rafters where they bobbed like mellow fireflies. Their warm light mingled with sunbeams, casting soft halos on the plants. A wave of magic rippled. The quilt unfolded itself in midair, settling on a patch of velvet moss. Teacups drifted out of the basket, spinning gently until they rested on invisible saucers. Damian set down a thermos and a small charmed phonograph that began to play low acoustic guitar. Hazel gaped. You did all this in 10 minutes? He shrugged, cheeks flushing. You inspire quick thinking. Her heart thumped. She lowered herself onto the quilt. Damian poured tea, a swirling blend that smelled of rose and blackcurrant. He passed her a cup, their fingers brushing. A spark zapped up her arm. She cleared her throat. Where did you get a floating quilt spell? Page 143 of your Dream Aura notebook, he said. I may have skimmed. She rolled her eyes fondly. Of course. They sipped tea in companionable silence. Hazel's nerves eased under the gentle guitar chords. She glanced at Damian. He was fiddling with a small broom, her old keyboard broom that whistled notes when you swept. He strummed it like a ukulele. It emitted playful arpeggios. He began to pluck a tune, halting but heartfelt, then sang softly. The words were simple, about stardust, spilled potions, and finding color in chaos. Hazel laughed at the whimsical lyrics, pressing a hand over her mouth. That's ridiculous. Ridiculously true, he returned, eyes shining. He finished with a dramatic sweep. The broom squeaked a final note. Hazel clapped, giggles bubbling. You're going to make my greenhouse jealous. Let it, Damian said. You deserve serenades. They shared a smile that stretched until Hazel felt her cheeks ache. She set down her teacup. I don't remember the last time I laughed like that. I'd like to be the reason every day, he said, voice thick with emotion. Hazel's breath caught. She fought the urge to lean closer. Instead, she glanced at the lanterns, at the vines, anywhere but his eyes. You should see the stars in here at night, she murmured. The glass filters out city glare. Then we'll stargaze, he said instantly. Hazel finally met his gaze, and what she saw there, warmth, hope, something so earnest, made her chest tighten. For one reckless second, she thought, maybe I don't want to fix this. Maybe I want it to be real. A vine rustled, Quincy bobbed beside her ear. Reminder, ethical obligation. Hazel blinked away the dreamy haze. Damian, thank you. Really. But I should finish client orders. He nodded, though disappointment flickered. Of course. Lead on. Hazel helped him pack the basket. Lanterns folded. Quilt hovered into place. She tried not to dwell on how graceful they moved together, like two halves of a spell. Back in the lab, Hazel checked the clock. Late afternoon. She assigned Damian to jar starflower petals, a safe task, and resumed mixing an elixir. Every so often she glanced at him, sleeves rolled, brow furrowed in concentration, humming her picnic tune. Her heart flip-flopped each time. After bottling her last order, Hazel finally ushered Damian toward the sitting nook for a break. As he stepped away, she noticed a smear of potion residue on his cheek. Without thinking, she reached up and wiped it with a cloth. His eyes closed at her touch, lashes fluttering. Heat surged between them. Hazel drew back abruptly. You've got potion on your face. He smiled lazily. Your potions suit me. That one might turn you green, she lied. Wash up. He chuckled and headed to the sink. Hazel exhaled, hands trembling. She turned toward her office alcove, just a small roll-top desk where she kept personal effects. Maybe she'd find solace in familiar clutter. She slid open the top drawer to grab a quill. Her gaze caught on a corked vial buried beneath parchment. Familiar. Blue-white sparkles floated inside. Hazelnut warmth drained from her limbs. The real antidote. Her stomach dropped. She remembered pouring tea, rosehip calming, but she must have grabbed the wrong vial. The antidote had never left this drawer. Her knees wobbled. She clutched the desk edge, breath shallow. That meant Damian's devotion, his serenades, everything since day one. Still potion. A soft melody drifted from the sink as he washed. Hazel rubbed her forehead, heart pounding. She'd fallen for a lie of her own making. She wanted to scream, to cry, to smash the vial in all her foolish hope. Instead, she slid it back, closed the drawer, and pressed trembling fingers to her lips. Behind her, footsteps approached. She brushed tears from her lashes and pasted on a weak smile before turning. Damian stood there, drying his hands. His eyes met hers with gentle warmth that made her ache. He held a telescope kit under one arm. Hazel, he said softly, I think I'm falling in love with you all over again. Her world tilted. Part of her wanted to reach for him, another part wanted to run. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Hazel's pulse hammered in her ears. Damian stood only a breath away, holding that telescope kit like it was an engagement ring. She forced air into her lungs. Damian, she managed, don't we need to talk? He smiled, hopeful. About constellations? I thought we could try it tonight. The forecast shows clear skies. Not about constellations, she fidgeted, fingers knotting together. About feelings. Mine, yours. The potion. His brow creased. The potion you gave me yesterday? Hazel's voice shook. I never gave it to you. I mixed up the vials. What I gave you was just tea. Damian absorbed that, glance drifting to the telescope kit. So I'm still enchanted. Hazel expected anger or at least frustration. Instead, Damian's gaze softened. Then the way I feel right now might not be mine. It might be the potion, she whispered. I'm going to fix it tonight. He exhaled slowly. All right, but while we wait, can we finish the day? I promised to help jar moon petal essence, and you promised to show me how you calibrate spectral magnets. Hazel blinked. You still want to help? Nothing's changed, he said calmly. If these feelings are borrowed, I still feel them, and I want to use them for good until you sort this out. Quincy chimed in, floating closer. Acceptable compromise, supervised tasks only. A flicker of gratitude passed through Hazel. Okay, supervised. They returned to the lab island where opalescent petals floated in a wide copper pan. Hazel pressed her palms to the rim. We need to fold the fragrance into stasis orbs. Delicate work. I'll follow your lead, Damian said. Promise. She dipped a glass rod into the pan, swirling gently until vapor rose, catching sunlight in iridescent ribbons. Damian mirrored her movements with another rod, their motions synchronized, like a quiet dance in shimmering silence. Quincy hovered overhead, logging temperatures. Hazel's tension eased. Keep a steady swirl, slow as key. Damian nodded. Like coaxing a secret. She smiled despite herself. They swapped rods to do counter swirls, fingertips brushing. Hazel's heart responded with a stutter. She focused on transferring vapor into crystal spheres. Damian held each orb steady while she channeled the essence. When the final orb sealed, it emitted a faint chime. Perfect, Hazel said. Teamwork, Damian replied, pride in his voice. They set the orbs aside, and Hazel noticed a tiny cut on Damian's thumb, where a shard of crystal had nipped him earlier. Blood beaded. Barely a drop, but the glint stirred pangs of guilt. You're hurt, she said. It's nothing, he shrugged. She guided him to the sink, cleaned the cut with dragon leaf antiseptic, and wrapped it with a strip of moon moss that glowed faintly. Their hands lingered. Hazel's throat tightened. He'd bled for her, in a sense, and she still had to break whatever spell tied him. Quincy announced, pending tasks, label and shelve, lunch break advised. Food, Hazel echoed. She felt hollow. Damian perked up. Let me cook again. No glitter, Hazel said, marching to the kitchen. They settled on sandwiches, sourdough grilled with basil cheese, sun-dried tomatoes, and a sprinkle of cosmic salt that sparked when it hit the pan. Damian wore regular oven mitts this time, and Hazel monitored every ingredient. They sat at the alcove table. The sandwiches were delicious, gooey and fragrant. Hazel chewed absent-mindedly, mind spinning around the antidote. She needed to prepare a fresh batch. The old one might have degraded. Tonight, she'd do it tonight. Damian sipped water. Tell me something you've never told anyone. Hazel raised a brow. Now? He nodded. If we're counting down till I'm cured, I'd like to know the real you, even if the potion's making me brave enough to ask. She hesitated, then said quietly, I'm afraid of thunderstorms. It felt silly compared to brewing love potions, but it was true. The noise scrambles my focus. Damian's eyes warmed. We'll get you noise-canceling rune shells, and I'll hold your hand through every storm. Hazel's stomach flipped. You might not want to hold my hand after tonight. He leaned forward. Hazel, if tonight ends and I look at you the way a stranger does, you'll remind me of today and yesterday, and we'll see what returns on its own. But promise me something. What? If I still feel something, anything real, don't shut it out because of fear. Hazel opened her mouth, then closed it. She nodded once. A promise she wasn't sure she could keep, but it felt right to make. They finished lunch. Hazel cleared dishes while Damian wiped counters. No glitter in sight. Progress. Later they tackled Quincy's suggestion, recalibrating spectral magnets for a client's memory crystal set. Hazel attached copper coils to a stone slab while Damian organized reference charts. He read specs aloud, voice low and reassuring. At first the magnets hummed obediently, drawing pale light into ribbons. Then Damian's cut finger brushed a bare wire. The coil sparked bright white. A pulse shot through the magnets. They jolted off the slab, swirling around the room like angry fireflies. "Down!" Hazel shouted. She ducked as a magnet zipped overhead. Damian lunged, shielding Hazel with his body. Quincy dimmed lights to track magnetic current. Hazel kicked a lever that powered down polarity. Magnets clattered to the floor. Silence rang. Damian loomed over her, breathless. She could feel his heartbeat through his shirt. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Fine," she whispered. He cupped her cheek, thumb stroking away smudge. "Sorry I keep causing chaos." "Your chaos I can handle," she admitted softly. His gaze flicked to her lips. Hazel's chest tightened. She swallowed and stepped back. "We should reset the coils." Damian nodded, clearing his throat. "Lead on." With cautious teamwork, they reset the coils, this time without sparks. By dusk, the client's memory crystals glowed steady. Hazel packed them carefully, and Damian addressed a shipping label in elegant script. As she sealed the parcel, she caught him studying her with quiet admiration. She ached with want and guilt in equal measure. Quincy drifted closer. Evening protocol, catalog ingredients and secure containment fields. "I'll handle containment," Damian offered. Hazel took a breath. "I actually need you to pick up dinner from the corner noodle shop. It'll keep you out of the fumes." He straightened. "Dinner, sure." He grabbed his coat. "Anything you crave?" "Miso with extra seaweed," she said. "And lemon ginger tea," Quincy added. Damian saluted the orb. "Back soon." He departed, coat flaring like a cape. Hazel watched him go, door clicking shut. She turned to Quincy, chest heaving. "I have to brew the antidote now," she said. Quincy brightened. Necessary and timely. He projected the formula Hazel originally wrote, highlighting ratios. Hazel set up a small cauldron, this one ruby-lined, perfect for clarity elixirs. She measured distilled star-glow water, added dragon's breath powder, and carefully ground anti-aimer crystals, the last of her supply, into a fine shimmer. The brew glowed pale aquamarine. Quincy monitored. "Stir clockwise 82 times. Hazel counted aloud, pulse matching each rotation. At stir 33, lightning flashed outside. Summer storm rolling in early. Thunder rumbled. She flinched, but kept stirring. By stir 82, the potion pulsed to deep sapphire. She lowered the heat. Cooling phase. "Intent infusion required," Quincy reminded. Hazel braced her hands over the steam. She pictured Damian free from enchantment, making his own choices, maybe walking away. Tears stung her eyes. She whispered, "Let him be happy, even if it's not with me." The potion flashed white, then settled to calm blue. Quincy scanned. Neutralizer potency 98%. Stable. Hazel decanted it into a slim glass bottle, corking it. She slid it into her jacket pocket, heart pounding. Thunder cracked again. She hated storms, but she hated lies more. She would give Damian the antidote tonight. Whatever happened after, that was fate, not magic. The front door creaked. Damian stepped in, rain spattering his shoulders. He carried a paper bag tucked under his arm and balanced teacups on a tray in his other hand. "Storm came out of nowhere," he said, setting the tray down. He shrugged off his coat, shook droplets onto the mat. "Hope you're not too hungry." She tried to smile. Perfect timing. He unpacked steaming noodle bowls. Hazel's stomach twisted. She watched him pour tea, his movements careful, as if the fragile cups were sacred. They sat at the workshop's small table again, candles flickering. Rain hammered the skylight. Hazel clenched the antidote vial in her pocket. Damian slurped noodles, oblivious to her turmoil. Taste this broth. I think it might be a love potion itself. Hazel forced a spoonful. Warm, rich, slightly sweet. She set it down. Damian. He paused mid-sip. Her throat tightened. She couldn't do it mid-noodles. She'd wait until after. Let the meal finish, then she'd ask him to drink tea infused with the antidote. Just a few more moments. But as they ate, thunder boomed louder. Hazel's hands began to shake. Damian noticed, setting his chopsticks down. Hey, it's just a storm. I know. She laughed brittle. Silly fear. He moved his chair closer. I'll sit until it passes, if that's okay. Hazel nodded. He stayed near, talking about constellations and the best telescope angles for city nights. His voice wove calm around her. She managed to finish her noodles. When the bowls were empty, he rose to wash them. She followed him to the sink, heart racing. She pulled the vial from her pocket, weighing it in her palm. Now, she cleared her throat. Damian, before dessert, can you drink something for me? He glanced at the vial. Another experimental tea? More like a cleanse, Hazel said. It's important. He studied her, sensing gravity. Of course. He filled a mug with hot water, handed it to her. She uncorked the vial. The liquid glowed faintly. She poured it in, stirring. Damian held the mug, steam curling between them. Thunder rumbled again. Hazel's breath shook. One sip, then we'll see. Damian raised the mug, eyes steady on hers. No matter what happens, he said softly, thank you for trusting me with the truth. Hazel's vision blurred. He took a deep breath and sipped. Damian lowered the mug, eyes closed, lashes beaded with steam droplets. Hazel held her breath while the rain outside drummed a frantic countdown. Quincy hovered just above the rim of the cup, blue light scanning every swirl of vapor. How does it taste? Hazel ventured, voice hardly more than air. Like blue wildflowers and beach wind, Damian murmured. He gave a slight shiver, placed the mug on the table, and pressed fingertips to his temples. There's a rushing sound in my head. Side effect, Quincy said, circuitry flickering. Antidote initiating, neurochemical bonds realigning. Damian grimaced. Hazel stepped closer, resisting the impulse to stabilize him with a touch. He steadied himself against the table, breathing through his mouth. I feel cold, he said, and light like I'm made of paper. His gaze lifted to Hazel, searching. You look different, not in a bad way, just clearer. Thunder rattled the skylight. Hazel swallowed. It's the potion separating from your memories. Give it time. I'll make tea, real tea, to warm you. She moved to the stove and filled a kettle. Metal pinged as the flame flared. Behind her, Damian sank onto a stool, elbows braced on his knees. She risked a glance back. His strong shoulders slumped, but there was no anger, no disgust, only confusion and quiet wonder, as though the world had tilted and he was discovering gravity all over again. Quincy whispered, compulsion dropping 60%, 55, 50. Hazel's gut twisted. The last remnants were fading fast. She poured water into a pot, added calming chamomile and bittersweet star anise pods. Steam spiraled upward. She clutched the handle, knuckles whitening. What if he looked up and couldn't remember why he stayed? She carried the pot to the table and filled 2 cups. He inhaled, letting the fragrant steam waft over his face. You're shivering, Hazel said, sliding her sweater from her shoulders and draping it across him. He hesitated, then tucked it tighter. The gesture warmed her more than the tea warming her palms. I remember pancakes, he murmured, eyes on the swirling surface of his cup. And alphabetized spellbooks. But it's foggy. He peered up. What else did I do today? Hazel's chest pinched. You helped with moon petals. And you saved me from rogue magnets? A small smile surfaced. Magnets. I remember Sparks, then you. Very close. His gaze lingered on her lips, then flicked away. It feels like yesterday was a dream, but nice. Quincy pulsed chartreuse, compulsion level 32 stabilizing. Lightning flashed, the lights flickered, glass rattled throughout the lab. A moment later, a low popping sound rose from the storage shelves. Hazel's heart leaped. She spun as a row of corks vaulted off potion bottles, rainbow froth foaming over the sides. The pressure seal failed, Hazel gasped, grabbing a containment stave. I forgot to vent those after the bluebell contamination. Damian bolted upright, sweater falling to the floor. Tell me what to do. Grab the thermal lid, she barked, already dashing toward the shelf. Foam sloshed onto the floor, sizzling in bright stripes. One bottle tottered. Hazel skidded, regained balance, sliding her stave beneath the bottle's base just as it tipped. She hefted it up. Liquid slopped over, fizzing where it landed. Damian appeared behind her, hauling the heavy copper lid from the sterilizer. Together they pressed it over the erupting cluster of bottles. Quincy dimmed the lab lights to trace fizz levels. The lid rattled, but the eruption stopped. Hazel exhaled, adrenaline thumping. Damian stood so close she could feel warmth emanating through his damp shirt. She realized her hands were still on his, fingers interlaced on a hot copper surface. The sudden, unmistakable awareness between them made her throat go dry. Quincy projected quietly. Compulsion 10, potency negligible, feelings now primarily endogenous. Hazel's eyes widened. Damian's brow furrowed as though he'd overheard. She stepped back, heart slamming. Quincy's statement meant the antidote had worked. If Damian felt anything now, it was his own choice. She cradled her forearms, uncertain what to say. Damian stared at the sealed bottles, then at her, rainwater still glistening on his hair. He opened his mouth, closed it, and swallowed. We make a great team even when you're not enchanted, Hazel said, a wobbly smile tugging the corner of her mouth. A soft laugh escaped him. Apparently. He wiped foam from her cheek with his sleeve. Are you all right? Better than the shelving, she said, glancing at the puddle. Steam rose where potion goo met cooling charms on the floor. They worked side by side to mop up residue. No hints of forced adoration colored his movements, only quiet intention. Hazel handed him a rag. He thanked her with a subdued grin. The simple normalcy unraveled the tight knot in her chest. Yet another knot formed. Fear of the next words they needed to share. When the last droplet vanished, Hazel led him back to the small table. Quincy hovered overhead, dimming glow for privacy. Hazel wrapped both hands around her cup. The compulsion is gone, Quincy says. Damian nodded slowly. I guessed. He flexed his injured hand, then pressed fingers to his yoke button. I thought maybe clarity would bring anger or embarrassment, but I just feel relieved. Also tired. Take the couch, she offered. Storm's still raging. You shouldn't drive. He watched the rain racing down the panes. I'd rather stay if you don't mind, but maybe in the guest loft? I want to respect your space. Her heart warmed. That's thoughtful. Silence trickled like raindrops down glass. Hazel stood retrieving a folded blanket from the closet, a kaleidoscope patchwork sewn by her mother. She handed it to him. He accepted it but didn't move. This day feels twice as long as normal days, he said. I'm remembering bits, like a film out of order. There's humor, sparks, good food, laughter, but it's missing captions. We can fill them in later, she whispered. Tomorrow, maybe. Tomorrow, he echoed, gaze holding hers. I might wake up and realize this was all absurd, or I might wake up and... He exhaled, a soft huff. I've been lonely, Hazel. Long before any potion. She bit her lip. Me too. He nodded, clutching the blanket. Sleep first. He stepped back. "If you hear thunder, call me." Thunder boomed on cue, rattling the glass. Hazel winced. Damien's shoulders tensed. He forced a smile. "See? I'm on duty." He gestured toward the loft ladder. "I'll be there." Hazel almost reached for him. Instead, she offered a faint wave. He climbed, footsteps soft on wooden rungs. Quincy floated toward her. Heart rate elevated, the orb observed. "Tiny bit," Hazel admitted, pressing a hand over her chest. "Compulsion 0.8, Quincy said, effectively negligible. His attraction persists." Hazel swallowed, "Then it's real." "Probability high," Quincy said, rotating thoughtfully. "You should rest as well." She nodded and did the final lab check. Makeshift repairs, containment seals relatched, a chalk sigil on the floor to neutralize stray energies. Finally, she padded up to her bedroom. Rain whispered overhead. Thunder rumbled again, but softer. She curled under her quilt, listening to the storm's heartbeat until sleep crept in. Sometime later, she woke to faint footfalls on the stairs. The storm had slipped into a lull. Moonlight filtered through the skylight, pale and silver. Damien's silhouette stood in her doorway, outlined by the dim glow of Quincy floating behind him like a guardian firefly. "Sorry," he whispered. "You said thunderstorms scramble your focus. Thought you might be awake." Hazel sat up, brushing hair from her eyes. "Just a light rumble. I brought defense." He held up a tray, 2 mugs of warm milk frothing with honey stardust, and a small glass orb that shimmered with calming rune symbols. "Portable quiet field." She smiled sleepily. "Come in." He set the tray down on her bedside table, activating the orb with a tap. An invisible hush settled. Distant thunder dulled to a faint heartbeat. Hazel took a mug. The cream warmed her palms. Damien lingered beside the bed, uncertain. She scooted, making space. He eased onto the edge, keeping a polite distance. They drank in silence. Moonlight painted faint silver stripes across his cheekbones. Hazel studied him out of the corner of her eye. No stars in his gaze this time. Just fatigue, gentleness, something humble. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I keep replaying the moment we sealed those bottles," he said. "I remember thinking, if I could hold this feeling, this connection, without magic, I'd..." "It sounds insane." "What feeling?" "That you fit me," he said simply. "Chaos and order, motion and stillness." He fidgeted with the blanket edge. Potion or not, that was there. Hazel's throat closed. She set her mug down. "I felt it too." He exhaled, a fragile smile tugging his lips. "Would it be all right if..." He gestured vaguely, as though his words couldn't catch up. She took his hand. "Yes." He intertwined fingers with hers, palm warm, steady. They sat like that while the quiet field hummed. Quincy drifted to the doorway, dimming lights further. Hazel laid back against the pillows. Damien reclined beside her, still holding her hand above the covers. They stared at the skylight. Rain tapped lightly now, droplets silvered by moonbeams. After a long while, Damien whispered, "No butterflies or glitter, just us." Hazel smiled into the darkness. "Glitter is optional." He chuckled. "I could get used to optional." He squeezed her hand, then let go, folding arms behind his head and closing his eyes. "Wake me if you need thunder patrol." She turned on her side, watching his breaths even out. He looked peaceful, vulnerable in sleep. The man beneath the billionaire polish, the one who hauled copper lids and improvised serenades. A swell of tenderness filled her chest. Quincy pinged a private notification. Emotional equilibrium stable. Compulsion. 0. Potential romantic outcome. Optimistic. Hazel's lashes dampened. She whispered so softly only the orb could register. Tell me I didn't mess this up for good. Quincy responded with a gentle twinkle. Unknown variables, but current trajectory promising. Hazel stroked Damian's knuckles with her thumb. He murmured something unintelligible, shifting closer. She let her eyes fall shut, warm milk still lingering sweet on her tongue. Morning would bring questions and maybe regrets, but tonight, a night of rainlight, tea steam, and unenchanted affection, was more than she dared hope. She drifted into sleep, heartbeat syncing with the steady rhythm of his breathing beside her. Hazel woke to the soft patter of rain against the skylight and the gentle sensation of fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles on the back of her hand. She blinked, orienting herself. Damian lay on top of the quilt beside her, one arm draped across the pillow between them, breathing slow and even. Sometime after midnight, they had both slipped from conversation into sleep, fully clothed, shoes kicked off at the foot of the bed. She studied his relaxed face for a moment, the faint smile tugging one corner of his lips, the way a raindrop's reflection shimmered on his dark lashes, and her chest filled with heavy warmth. Careful not to disturb him, she eased her hand free, padded to the edge of the room, and snagged her robe. Quincy's orb rested on a shelf, light dimmed to a sleepy indigo. As soon as Hazel's toes touched the creaky floorboard, the orb brightened and floated over. "Good morning," Quincy whispered, voice pitched low. "Restfulness rating you 58%, Damian 72%, average couple restfulness score 65%. Hazel cinched her robe. We're not a couple." "Metric still applies," Quincy replied, then added in a softer tone. "Your heart rate elevated upon observation of his REM state. Data suggests fondness." Hazel rolled her eyes but couldn't keep the corner of her mouth from lifting. "Start the kettle?" she asked. Quincy glowed green and drifted toward the kitchenette. Hazel followed, grimacing as she caught her reflection in the polished copper backsplash. Wild curls, pillow lines imprinted on her cheek, mascara smudged in raccoon crescents. She splashed water on her face, toweled off, and rummaged for two mismatched mugs. By the time she'd prepped tea leaves, hers a bright ginger blend, Damian's an earthy oolong, the kettle hissed. Quincy poured with impeccable precision. Footsteps sounded behind her. Hazel turned to find Damian silhouetted in the doorway, hair mussed, shirt wrinkled, but smile gentle. He rubbed his eyes. "Thought I woke up alone," he murmured. "I wouldn't abandon you to my chaotic loft," Hazel replied, handing him his mug. Their fingers brushed. A tiny thrill zipped along her arm. Damian inhaled the steam. "Smells like rain and wood smoke." He sipped, closed his eyes, sighed contentedly. "Thank you." They moved to the narrow breakfast bar that overlooked the main lab. The rain's rhythm provided a hush between them. Hazel's nerves twitched with half-formed questions. Are we okay? Does yesterday still count? But she settled for small talk first. "So," she said, blowing on her tea, "you never finished your story about the shoebox monarch butterflies." Damian tilted his head, surprised. "You remembered." "I remember everything after Rogue Magnets." She glanced down, embarrassed by her eagerness. He smiled softly. "Well, I let the butterfly go, followed it until it flew into the sun. That feeling of letting something beautiful exist without caging it. I've chased it ever since." Hazel's heart flipped. "That's poetic." He shrugged. "Turns out pursuing beauty in business means conferences and quarterly reports, not butterflies." He studied her over the rim of his mug. "Yesterday felt closer." Hazel's pulse jumped. She noticed a faint indentation on his cheek from the sweater knit he'd used as a pillow. Without thinking, she reached out and brushed the indentation with her thumb. Damian froze, breath catching. Hazel's fingertip hovered for an instant before she withdrew, cheeks heating. "Sorry," she mumbled. "Don't be," he said quietly. Quincy cleared his virtual throat. "Incoming message, Damien Slate, priority mark sedan." Damian blinked and waved for display. A translucent screen unfolded from Quincy's orb. Hazel squinted at a formal invitation bearing emerald filigree. Damian rubbed his temple. I forgot. The annual Quadrivium Tech Foundation Gala is tonight. They expect board members on stage. He scrolled, eyes widening at the dress code clause. And they've moved it up 2 weeks. Hazel assumed he'd excuse himself for the evening. Instead, he looked at her, hopeful. Come with me? She nearly choked on ginger tea. Me? At a black tie gala? Exactly you. He set his mug down with a deliberate clink. No potions, no magical accidents, just us in a different environment. We can see if this, he gestured between them, makes sense outside your lab. Hazel's pulse pounded. She pictured polished women in couture gowns, slick bankers shaking hands, paparazzi flashes. In that scene, she was pure chaos personified. She forced a laugh. I'd probably conjure a firefly swarm in the punch bowl. It would be the most memorable gala in years, Damian said. Then softer, earnest. Please, let me show you my world, and let me see yours at the same time. Hazel chewed her bottom lip. Fear thrummed. Fear of looking foolish, of confirming all her insecurities. But beneath the fear floated an undeniable thrill. Okay, she whispered. Damian's grin spread, bright enough to eclipse rainy daylight. Hazel couldn't help grinning back, though nerves twisted her stomach like a knot of vines. Quincy hovered closer, voice dry. Required preparation time, 7 hours, 26 minutes. Wardrobe acquisition strongly advised. Hazel groaned. I don't do real gowns. My nicest dress is patchworked silk with dancing cauldrons embroidered on the hem. We can modify, Quincy said. Damian rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. Whatever you wear, you'll be the brightest thing in the room. That's the problem, Hazel muttered, but warmth flared under his compliment all the same. 6 hours later, Hazel's loft looked like a fashion tornado had ripped through. Dresses from every corner of the city, courtesy of Damian's personal shopper, hung from potion racks and suspended broom handles. Fabric shimmered, sparkled, reflected, and in 2 alarming cases, meowed. Hazel stood in the center wearing a scarlet gown 3 sizes too big, clutching bunches of fabric under her armpits. Oh, this screams elegant wizardberry, Quincy announced, scanning with a laser grid, but tailoring required. Hazel squinted at her reflection in a floating mirror. I look like a walking Valentine. Next, Quincy chirped. Damian lounged on a high stool, observing with respectful distance. Every so often he Google searched etiquette rules to ensure he wasn't inadvertently putting her into social peril. He now held a notebook filled with scribbles. Do not let Hazel near open flame. Check purse for runaway pixies. Remind board chair to pronounce Sparks, not Sparkses. Hazel shimmied out of the scarlet gown behind a makeshift privacy curtain, then tugged on a silver sheath. The mirror reflected a molten pool of fabric that clung to every curve. Hazel winced. Damian coughed, eyes flicking away, cheeks pink. You look... He cleared his throat. Dazzling. I look like a disco ball got wrapped in tinfoil, Hazel grumbled. Quincy rotated. Continuing search. 30 minutes later, frustration simmered. Hazel dropped onto a crate, hair frizzed, cheeks flushed. None of this is me. I need something that won't feel like a costume. Damian stood and approached slowly, kneeling so they were eye level. If tonight feels like pretend, we leave. Deal? He extended his pinky. Hazel hooked hers with his, a smile tugging her lips. Deal. She exhaled and closed her eyes, picturing comfort. Starry night skies, swirling potion colors, quiet self-confidence. Inspiration flickered. She hopped up, hurried to her workbench, and rummaged through enchanted textiles until she found a simple, black slip dress. A thrifted treasure she'd once charmed for subtle luminosity. She slipped behind the curtain and donned it, When she stepped out, the overhead lights shifted. The dress's matte fabric remained black, but faint starbursts pulsed whenever she moved, like constellations surfacing across midnight velvet. The silhouette skimmed her figure without clinging. Damian's jaw slackened. "Hazel." Her nerves fluttered. "Too much?" "Just right," he breathed. Quincy scanned. Luster index at optimal level. Sparkle limited to 60-second intervals. Acceptable. Hazel smoothed the dress over her hips. "Shoes?" "Dr. Martens?" Damian offered with a hopeful grin. She laughed. "Tempting, but maybe kitten heels." She found black velvet pumps, simple, manageable. "Hair," Quincy declared. He floated a silver comb. Hazel gathered her curls into a loose, low bun, stray tendrils framing her face. She dabbed lip tint, soft rose, and dusted her cheeks with moonbeam powder. When she looked up, Damian watched with awe. "You're breathtaking," he said. There was no potion in his voice, no enchantment sheen, just quiet truth. Hazel's heart thrummed. "You clean up pretty nicely yourself," she replied, taking in his charcoal suit and midnight tie. He'd swapped yesterday's glitter for a subtle sapphire pocket square, her favorite color hidden in a fold. Quincy beeped. "Transportation summoned. Arrival in 10 minutes. Hazel's stomach flipped. No turning back. Damian extended his arm. "Forward, then." She looped her arm through his, fingers settling against the warm fabric of his sleeve. Together they stepped into the elevator. Quincy drifted behind, projecting calming statistics. Hazel ignored the numbers, focusing on the steady beat of Damian's pulse beneath her fingertips. They emerged onto the street where a sleek car waited. Nothing showy, but polished. The driver nodded. Hazel ducked inside, smoothing her dress. Damian followed, tapping a message on his phone. As the car glided through downtown, skyscraper windows glittered like jars of captured starlight. Hazel leaned into the seat, swallowing nerves. "Tell me a silly fact," Damian said suddenly, and she blinked. "About what?" "Anything. Distract me." She thought. "I once paid rent with enchanted macarons. Landlord accepted them, then asked me to move out after she grew gills for 2 weeks." Damian burst out laughing. The driver glanced up in the rearview mirror, bemused. Hazel grinned. Nerves loosened. "Your turn," she said. Damian considered. "I still carry the shoebox I raised that butterfly in. I keep ticket stubs inside from every boring fundraiser I've survived, in case I need reminding to do something daring." Heartstrings tugged. Hazel covered his hand. "Tonight won't be boring." Outside, the car slowed in front of a grand hall trimmed with ivy and glowing lanterns. Tuxedoed guests streamed up marble steps under a gilded arch. Cameras flashed. Hazel inhaled. Damian squeezed her fingers. "Ready?" "No," she whispered, but smiled anyway. He smiled back. They stepped out into the twilight, Quincy circling overhead like a loyal comet. Hazel kept her grip on Damian's arm as they climbed the wide marble steps, each footfall thudding like a countdown in her ears. Spotlights swept over the entrance, catching flecks of enchanted starlight in her dress and turning them into tiny constellations on the pavement. The photographers along the velvet rope line shouted Damian's name. Then, after a heartbeat, hers, though it came out wobbly, like they weren't sure how to pronounce it. Quincy hovered discreetly at shoulder level, using his faint pulse as a lens flare deterrent to keep camera flashes from frying anybody's retinas. "Smile and keep walking," Damian murmured, leaning closer so only she could hear. "You're doing great." "I feel like my knees are made of agitated gelatin," Hazel whispered back. "That's oddly specific," he said, chuckling. "Exactly why I want you here." One photographer's flash strobed dangerously close to Quincy, whose sensors reacted with a startled blip. The orb zipped upward, colliding with Hazel's clutch purse. A muffled squeak escaped the clutch, a side effect of Hazel's habit of storing minor familiars in cramped spaces. With a hiss, the purse popped open, burping a handful of glittery scrap parchment into the night air. The fragments drifted down onto Damien's shoulder like confetti. The nearest photographer went wild, snapping continuous shots. Hazel's cheeks flared hot. Damien brushed the glitter off and winked at her. Best accessory I've worn all season. Accessory? That was Sir Scribbles. He's supposed to stay quiet. Hazel gently patted the clutch, and a disgruntled chirrup sounded inside. Damien's mouth twitched. Sir Scribbles is a animated notepad, she muttered. Do not judge. No judgment, he promised. Creative genius sometimes squeaks. Inside, the foyer was a cathedral of glass and steel, with Art Deco chandeliers humming low chords overhead. Waitstaff in silver waistcoats glided among crystalline cocktail towers. Hazel's nostrils filled with the faint tang of polished marble and truffle hors d'oeuvres. Damien kept her arm tucked in his, forging a path through clusters of donors. Quincy trailed behind, projecting low-volume commentary. 80% of attendees are major shareholders in Quadrivium's green tech subsidiary, he noted, optic ring rotating. Average conversational topic: mergers, tax code reforms, spa weekends. Spa weekends? Hazel hissed. Specifically lunar hot springs packages, Quincy clarified. They arrived at a semicircle of board members. 3 men in near-identical tuxedos and a sharply dressed woman with silver streaks in her pixie cut. Damien introduced Hazel with pride, naming her achievements: patent-pending quantum potion interface, neighborhood revitalization grants funded by her alchemy profits, things Hazel rarely credited herself for. The board chair, Mr. Galanes, nodded politely, though the corner of his mouth twitched like he tasted something sour. Enchanted, Miss Sparks, said the silver-haired woman, offering a firm handshake. I'm Leora DuPont, R&D. Hazel returned the shake, grateful for genuine warmth. Leora's eyes glimmered with curiosity. Rumor says you can weave stability fields into liquids. Might like to chat later. Happy to, Hazel said, relief loosening her shoulders, until Mr. Galen stepped closer. So this is the innovative witch our Damien has been championing, he said, the word witch rolling off his tongue like damp tissue. I suppose you'll be conjuring up some excitement for tonight's donors. Before Hazel could craft a reply, Damien's voice cooled. Hazel is here as my guest, not a circus act, Alistair. Gillen's laughed lightly. No offense intended, we all appreciate flair. He eyed Hazel's dress, the subtle shifting stars. Though subtlety has its place. All due respect, Hazel said, tone level. Flair and subtlety aren't mutually exclusive, they orbit. Leora snorted into her champagne flute. Galenas raised an eyebrow but moved on, apparently deciding the conversation lacked fundraising potential. Damien squeezed Hazel's hand. He's a fossil. Hazel shrugged, forcing composure. Fossils are valuable. They remind us evolution is inevitable. Quincy vibrated with a quiet chime. 5-0 in social sparring, Sparks leads. Hazel swallowed a laugh. A string quartet struck up a modern jazz cover somewhere beyond the pillars. The maitre d'hotel rang a tiny gong, announcing dinner. Waiters ushered guests toward long banquet tables draped in emerald silk. Hazel and Damien were led to the central table beside a molecular gastronomy display that fumed dramatic vapor rings. Place cards gleamed. Hazel's name had been spelled correctly, though indecisive handwriting left the trailing S of Sparks suspiciously like a Z. As she settled, a waiter poured champagne. Hazel sniffed, mind instantly cataloging notes of pressed elderflower and starlight residue. Quadrivium sourced some wines from moonlit vineyards. She took a cautious sip. Damien leaned toward her. If any dish starts blinking, I'll assume that's normal. Hazel relaxed enough to grin. You should be safe. I promised Quincy no animated entree commentary tonight. Across the table, 2 executives chatted loudly about stock splits. Hazel zoned out, letting the drone of finance mingle with clinked crystal. She tried to focus on Damien's presence, the warmth of his knee brushing hers under the table, the way he sometimes tilted his head to really hear her even in a crowd. Dinner arrived in courses as elaborate as potion rituals. beetroot spheres levitating on micro-gusts of vapor, salmon slivered so thin it resembled rose petals, and a dessert shaped like a miniature nebula that sparkled with edible stardust. Hazel was testing a nebula spoonful when a tap came at her shoulder. She turned to face a willowy brunette in a champagne dress nearly the same hue as her skin. The woman's smile was bright and cold. "Excuse me," the brunette said brightly, "but I just had to compliment your dress. It's quite daring." Hazel's gut twitched. "Thank you. I'm Corinne," the woman added, pronouncing it like a breathy chord. She offered a hand with nails lacquered midnight black. Hazel shook, feeling heat creep into her cheeks. "Hazel Sparks," she said. Corinne flicked her gaze up and down Hazel's ensemble. "Hazel, charming. Damian, darling." She turned to Damian without missing a beat. "I didn't realize you were into performance art now." Damian's brow came down. "Corinne, she's my guest?" "Oh, of course," Corinne said sweetly. "I just love your confidence. Takes courage to bring alternative themes to a black tie gala. But then you always liked shaking the board up, Damian." With a tinkling laugh, she glided off. Hazel's fork hovered above the nebula dessert. The stars inside seemed to swirl faster, reflecting the dizzy swirl in her stomach. Damian touched her arm. "Ignore her." "Sure," Hazel managed, but the words lodged in her throat like undone stitches. She suddenly felt like a living glitch in this polished program. Conversation resumed around them. Cutlery chimed. Hazel forced a bite of dessert. Sweet fizz burst across her tongue, but tasted faintly like shame. Quincy pulsed a muted red alert. Emotional distress detected. Hazel set her spoon down, stood abruptly. "Excuse me." She navigated between chairs toward tall glass doors and stepped onto a balcony lined with vine-wrapped lanterns. City lights sighed below, water beating on the wrought iron rail. The cool night air hit her lungs like reality reasserting itself. Arms folded tight, she stared at the skyline. She told herself the quiver in her chest was just temperature adjustment. Behind her, the door creaked. Damian stepped out, closing it gently. "Thought you might need a rescue mission." "I'm fine," Hazel lied. He moved beside her, careful not to crowd. Rain-tinged wind teased the loose tendrils around her face. What Corinne said, "It doesn't matter," Hazel cut in. "I know I'm different. I don't belong here." Damian's voice deepened with concern. "You belong wherever you choose to be." She huffed. "Look at me. Glitter purse incidents before the coat check. Sir Scribbles squeaking. I brew potions in thrift store cauldrons. Your colleagues own islands. My colleagues own tax shelters that float." He nudged her shoulder. "Totally different." She gave a shaky laugh that felt more like a sob. "You know what I mean." Damian rested his forearms on the railing, looking out over the city. "All my life I've collected accolades. IPOs, partnerships, property. But none of those things smiled at me when a butterfly took flight." Hazel's throat tightened. "You don't have to say things you don't mean." "I mean them," he said softly, turning to face her. "The potion's gone. Yet every moment tonight I kept waiting to catch your eye because it makes everything else fade." He hesitated. "If this world makes you feel small, it's the world that's wrong." Hazel stared at him, heart beating a waltz. Wind whipped around them, tugging at his hair, making her dress's constellations pulse. "Damian," she whispered, "what if you wake up tomorrow and realize this is a mistake?" "Then we'll laugh and find a new adventure," he said simply. "But right now, may I kiss you?" The question hit her like dawn light. She nodded once. He cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her jaw. She met his gaze, steady, patient, unrushed. Then he leaned in. Their lips met, soft and tentative, a breath held between possibilities. Hazel melted, sliding her hands up his lapels, feeling thunder crackle under her skin. Magic stirred. The vines along the balcony shimmered, lanterns brightening to a gentle gold. Quincy hovered by the door, sensors whirring quietly, but not intruding. When the kiss broke, Hazel's legs wobbled. Damian rested his forehead against hers. "Still want to finish the gala?" he asked. She snorted. "I want to run before Sir Scribbles sets something on fire." "Let's ditch," he said. Hand in hand, they slipped back inside long enough for Damian to whisper excuses to the gala organizer, then headed for the coat check, past Galeniz's wide-eyed stare and Corinne's pinched smile. Hazel almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Outside, the driver looked startled to see them so early. Damian tipped him generously, then steered Hazel down the sidewalk toward a side street humming with neon signs. "I know a place," she said, adrenaline fizzing. "It's not classy." "Perfect," Damian said, matching her brisk pace. They passed quiet storefronts, traversed an alley lit by flickering charm lights, and emerged at a subterranean jazz punk bar with a neon sign that read, Echo Lounge. Hazel held open the heavy door. Inside, purple haze, enchanted spotlights, tables carved from repurposed gargoyle wings. A small stage stood beneath floating microphones that changed color based on key. The MC, a troll with gemstone piercings, recognized Hazel at once. "Stargirl is back," he bellowed, arms wide, "and she brought a suit." The crowd of eccentric regulars cheered. Hazel pulled Damian to the bar. "Trust me, the cocktails have mood magic." The bartender slid over 2 glowing drinks. Moonlit laugh for Hazel, solar courage for Damian. "I'm not sure I need more courage," Damian muttered, but took a gulp anyway. His drink fizzed gold, and his eyes sparkled. "Karaoke sign-ups," the troll MC called. Hazel raised an eyebrow at Damian. "Prepare to embarrass yourself?" He grinned. "Always." He scrawled his name on the board. Hazel added hers beneath. 5 minutes later, Damian stepped onto the stage. The microphone shifted to deep ruby as it sensed his nerves. He scanned the touch panel, lips twisting. Then, of all things, he selected an old boy band ballad from 20 years ago. Hazel covered her mouth, laughing. The instrumental started, cheesy synth strings. Damian cleared his throat and launched in, voice off-key but enthusiastic. He pointed at Hazel on the chorus, belting lyrics about eternal devotion. The crowd whooped, waving enchanted glow sticks that sprayed harmless sparks. Quincy recorded discreetly, storing for future blackmail. Hazel laughed so hard her cheeks hurt. She could practically see embarrassment steaming off him, yet he never looked away from her. The song ended with a dramatic falsetto note that cracked spectacularly. The bar erupted in applause. Damian bowed, red-faced but triumphant, and hopped down. Hazel kissed his cheek, pride swelling. "Brave." "Your turn," he panted. Hazel's heart thudded as she took the stage. The mic shimmered violet. She closed her eyes and selected a slow track, a soulful folk tune about finding light in impossible places. The first notes drifted, soft as candle flame. Hazel began to sing. Her voice, a little smoky, surprisingly vulnerable, floated over the hush. The bar's lights responded, dimming to a starfield of pinpoints, echoing her dress's constellations. Halfway through, Damian's eyes glistened. Hazel sang directly to him, letting every note carry the truth she'd been afraid to say out loud, that he made the dark corners brighter, that chaos could be beautiful if shared. On the final chorus, her voice cracked with emotion, but she didn't shy away. She let it tremble, and the bar trembled with her. Tables humming, floorboards vibrating, lanterns drifting like fireflies. The last note faded into a silence thick enough to fold. An audible exhale swept the room, then applause thundered. The troll MC whistled. Quincy flashed a celebratory teal. Hazel's knees shook as she stepped off the stage. Damian caught her, arms wrapping around her waist. "Never heard anything like that," he whispered. "I never sang it like that," she whispered back. They ordered another round, a shared drink called Aurora Twist that shifted through sunrise colors. They toasted with their foreheads touching, laughter bubbling between sips. Time blurred amid neon and music. Hazel felt lighter than air. Near midnight, they tumbled outside, damp night air cooling flushed cheeks. The rain had stopped, leaving pavement reflective like liquid glass. Damian hailed a cab, but Hazel shook her head. "Walk me home," she said. Hand in hand, they ambled through lamplit streets. Sir Scribbles squeaked occasionally from her clutch, doodling scribbles of hearts that leaked through the seams in faint golden chalk. Quincy tailed them like a discreet bouncer. At Hazel's door, they paused under a flickering porch lantern. Damian brushed a curl from her face. "Do you trust me now?" he asked, voice rough. Hazel's pulse echoed in her ears. "I'm learning." He smiled, kissed her knuckles, and followed her inside. They kicked off shoes, collapsed onto the couch. Hazel curled up against him, head on his shoulder, the soft hum of potion coolers in the background. "I might still wake up and freak out," she murmured. "I might freak with you," he replied, resting his cheek atop her hair. "Then we'll figure it out." Her eyes fluttered closed. Quincy dimmed the loft lights until only the warm glow of the potion cauldrons illuminated their joined hands. Hazel slipped into dreams where stars pulse like heartbeats and laughter keeps beat to the universe. Damian awoke the next morning sprawled halfway off Hazel's couch, blanket draped over one ankle, Quincy hovering inches from his face like a curious moon. The orb's optic ring pulsed cerulean. "Restfulness rating 84%, Quincy whispered. "Impressive given sodium intake from Aurora Twist." Damian squinted, then chuckled. "Morning." Across the room, Hazel shuffled from the kitchenette wearing plaid pajama bottoms and an oversized tee advertising a potion expo from 4 years ago. Her curls puffed in all directions. She balanced 2 steaming mugs. "Ginger tonic for the hangover champion," she announced, offering one. Damian sat up with a groan. "Champion by volume or enthusiasm?" "Both," Hazel replied, plopping beside him. Their shoulders bumped. "Quincy cataloged your performance as uninhibited sincerity." Quincy hummed proudly. "Viral potential medium-high, I refrained from immediate social upload." Damian inhaled the tonic citrus heat. "Thank you for that, Mercy." Hazel sipped hers, eyes crinkling. "I liked the sincerity. Even the pitchy bits. Especially." She nudged his knee. "You put your heart into it. People underestimate that." He swallowed warm ginger, gaze tracing the loft's soft morning light. "So, day 3 of no enchantments. Status report?" Hazel considered. "Potion influence 0. Emotional volatility, moderate. Butterflies, quantum." He laughed. "Mine too." Setting the mug down, he braced elbows on his knees. "Let's run diagnostics then. What scares you most right now?" The directness startled her, but she didn't flinch away. "Losing momentum," she admitted. "My life tends to accelerate, then explode. I'm afraid we'll get comfortable and I'll blow something up. Metaphorically or literally." Damian nodded slowly. "Fair. I'm afraid of missing it, of walking back into boardrooms and finding everything grayscale again." Hazel's heart squeezed. "Maybe we invent a calibration tool," she said lightly. "When things get too gray, we add color. When color risks meltdown, we dampen sparkle." "That sounds suspiciously like healthy balance," he teased. "I'm in." Sir Scribbles squeaked from Hazel's purse on the coffee table, scrabbling until a scrap of parchment wriggled free. The doodle depicted 2 stick figures holding hands under a rain of glitter hearts. Hazel snorted, snatching the slip. "Privacy breach." Damian grinned. "Artistic critique. Needs more glitter." She flicked the parchment at him. It stuck to his sleeve with static. He laughed, peeling it off. An alarm tone twinkled from Quincy. "Heads up. Mr. Galen's just scheduled an emergency board call at 2 o'clock to debrief last night's unexpected exit." Hazel winced. "Did we cause irreparable scandal?" Damian read the hollow note. "He's framing it as public relations question. Translation, he's rattled. I'll handle it." Hazel bit her lip. "If this jeopardizes your standing..." My standing needed shaking. He reached for her hand. And Ghislaine's doesn't know half my leverage. We'll be fine. She exhaled, relief pooling warm. In that case, we have ours. Want breakfast? Non-enchanted pancakes? That's like normal pancakes, he said, feigning horror. Tragic. Hazel tossed him a dish towel. Help or hush? Together they assembled ingredients. Damian whisked eggs while Hazel measured flour, scattering a dusting across her nose. Damian swiped it with a grin, drawing a tiny star. She retaliated by flicking a drop of batter onto his cheek. Quincy hovered overhead like a patient nanny, occasionally reminding them not to set the stovetop higher than 8. Mid-pour, Hazel's elbow nudged a flask of fizzroot essence. The tiny bottle tipped, ready to spill into the batter. Damian lunged, catching it just before a single drop fell. That would have made the pancakes levitate, Hazel admitted, cheeks pink. Might have been fun. He righted the flask. But let's keep breakfast grounded. They plated a stack as tall as a spellbook and doused it with maple syrup. Sitting cross-legged on the rug, they devoured fluffy bites while strategizing. I need to brew an order this afternoon, Hazel said around a mouthful. Memory boost tonic for a grad student. I'll join the board call, then swing back. Damian traced a syrup circle on his plate. After, maybe we evaluate your filing system. Hazel groaned dramatically. Are you determined to alphabetize my chaos? Collaborate, not conquer, he promised. Quincy chimed. Note, compromise algorithm 42 recommends dual catalog, Hazel's intuitive clusters and Damian's alphabetical sub-index. Hazel elbowed the orb lightly. Quit helping. Impossible, Quincy replied. After breakfast, Hazel ducked into the shower while Damian cleaned the dishes. Sir Scribbles scribbled thank you doodles anytime he passed the purse. Damian shook his head, amused. When Hazel emerged wrapped in a towel, steam curling behind her, Damian looked up and promptly dropped a fork. She raised an eyebrow. Slip, he said, cheeks coloring. Hazel's smile curled sly. I'll brew coffee. Minutes later, they stood by the lab counter inhaling the brew's roast. Hazel poured a stream of cream. It swirled into galaxy shapes. Damian leaned against the bench. I should head to the loft workspace for the call. Promise you won't experiment with levitation batter while I'm gone? Cross my cauldron, she said. He kissed her forehead, soft, lingering, then gathered his coat. Quincy accompanied him to the door. Hazel watched the stairwell empty, warmth lingering where his lips touched. With Damian gone, Hazel set to work. She arranged botanicals, measured lunar powder, and coaxed blue steam from a cauldron. Sir Scribbles hopped out of the purse and waddled across the bench, leaving affectionate doodles of potion bottles and hearts. Hazel patted his parchment head. Behave, she told him. A comfortable hush settled. Bubbling cauldron, ticking clock. Quincy's distant hum returning after escort duty. Partway through distillation, Hazel's gaze drifted to the karaoke bar photo that Quincy had printed and pinned by her chalkboard. In it, Damian held the mic mid-belting, eyes bright, and she stood behind, laughing so hard her shoulders shook. The captured joy made her insides glow. Steam hissed. She refocused, adjusting the coil. She let herself think ahead. Maybe a stargazing trip to those lunar vineyards, or teaching Damian how to hover on a broom. Maybe she could introduce him to her mother's Ren Fair circle. The idea startled her. Damian amid velvet tunics and turkey legs. He'd probably love it. By the time Damian returned, the tonic glowed cerulean in 12 vials. He stepped into the lab, tie loosened, expression thoughtful. Board call? Hazel asked. He shrugged off his jacket. Galens grumbled. Leora backed my plan to sponsor community science hubs, using your potion tech as interactive curriculum. Hazel's jaw dropped. My tech? Kids deserve to learn that magic and science overlap. He tapped the vials. Like this. Real momentum. Her chest filled with buoyant excitement and something tenderer. You're serious? Deadly. He softened. But only if you want in. Hazel's smile bloomed unstoppable. I want. Damian returned the smile. Good. We celebrate tonight. Low-key. Meaning? He raised a carton of takeout dumplings from behind his back. Picnic on the roof, minus floating quilts. Practical romance, Hazel said. I can get behind that. Evening washed the city in rose and peach. They climbed the ladder to Hazel's flat roof, Quincy hovering with lanterns that glowed dim gold. They spread an old tapestry and sat cross-legged, sharing dumplings and jasmine tea. Distant traffic hummed. Stars pricked through the dusk. Hazel's dress pulsed in response, faint clusters mirroring the sky. Sir Scribbles peeked out of Hazel's pocket, scribbled a tiny shooting star onto a dumpling wrapper, then retreated. Damian reclined, hands behind his head. No microphones here. He sighed. No stage fright. Hazel agreed, lying beside him. Quincy dimmed his lights, giving them privacy. For a while, they simply watched Orion climb the sky. Hazel traced a constellation with her fingertip. That one's my favorite. The alchemist's ladle. Damian squinted. I thought that was Orion's belt. Dual purpose, she smiled. Depends on your story. He caught her hand, linking their fingers. Let's write ours. Heat fluttered in Hazel's abdomen. Hope. Possibility. She squeezed back. Eventually, the night air cooled. Damian fetched her a sweater. They packed up, climbed down. Inside, Hazel rinsed cups. Damian stacked books whose pages Sir Scribbles had scattered. They fell into easy household rhythm that felt shockingly natural. At midnight, Hazel yawned wide. Damian looped an arm around her waist. Bedtime for witches. She laughed drowsily. Bedtime for billionaires, too. In her room, she hesitated, heart thrumming. Damian brushed a knuckle down her cheek. I'll take the couch. She caught his hand. Stay. He searched her eyes, then nodded. They settled under the quilt, fully clothed, facing each other. Hazel's palm rested on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. Quincy dimmed the last lamp, retreating to standby mode. Silence settled, comfortable, warm. Hazel's lids drooped. Before sleep claimed her, she whispered, I think I trust you. Damian's arms tightened. I'll keep earning it. She drifted off to the sound of his breathing syncing with hers, stars pulsing across her dress like quiet applause. Hazel woke first, stirred by thin ribbons of sunlight slipping through the loft skylight. A warm weight rested across her waist. Damian's arm, heavy and relaxed. He lay on his side, facing her, one cheek smushed adorably against the pillow, hair standing in every direction. His steady breath tickled a curl that had fallen across her forehead. She smiled at the different universe she now occupied, one where mornings began with softness instead of chaotic alarms or simmering cauldrons. Carefully, she lifted his arm and rolled out of bed. Sir Scribbles was perched on the nightstand like a guardian gargoyle of paper, a quill clamped in his parchment mouth. At Hazel's movement, the living notebook twitched and spat the quill onto a scrap, scribbling furiously. Hazel glanced over his shoulder, a doodle of two stick figures at an altar beneath floating hearts, a very wobbly ring hovering in midair. She snorted so loudly Damian stirred. Morning? He mumbled, voice gravelly and sweet. Morning. Sir Scribbles apparently moonlights as a fortune-teller. Damian propped himself on an elbow, blinking at the doodle. Ambitious little rectangle, isn't he? Hazel tucked the picture inside the notebook. He's not subtle. Damian's gaze drifted to Hazel. His sleepy smile widened. Neither is my heart. He reached, drew her back to the mattress, and pressed a gentle kiss to her temple. Hazel let herself sink beside him for a moment. Then her stomach rumbled thunderously. Clearly I need to feed you, Damian said, rising. Kitchen takeover? Only if you promise no glitter. Cross my cardigan, he replied, shuffling toward the kitchenette in plaid pajama pants and Hazel's oversized sweatshirt. Hazel followed, yawning into her shoulder. Quincy floated into view from his charging perch, optic lights pulsing a cheerful green. Restfulness rating: Hazel, 92%. Damian, 81%. Breakfast protocol commencing. "Let's do pancakes that stay on the plate," Hazel said, rummaging for ingredients. Sir Scribbles flapped after her, hopping onto the counter to doodle a stack of pancakes with smiley faces. Damian whisked batter, while Hazel sliced strawberries and bantered with Quincy about safe stovetop temperatures. Batter hissed on the pan, filling the loft with comforting sweetness. Damian glanced up as Hazel sprinkled sliced strawberries into a small bowl of sugar. "I dreamed you were floating above the city in a giant teacup. It kept tipping but never spilled." She laughed. "That's actually my backup plan for efficient commuting." He flipped a pancake. "I'll build the teacup if you enchant it." "We'd crash inside of a week." "Worth it," he teased. They stacked pancakes, drizzled syrup, and slid into breakfast at the tiny breakfast bar. Sir Scribbles hopped between plates, drawing little hearts in the syrup trails. Hazel tapped his parchment head. Boundaries. The notebook chirped and rolled onto its back like a scolded puppy. Hazel forked a bite. "I got an email yesterday from the Prism Guild." Damian paused mid-chew. "The elite magical research collective your mom always talked about? The one that studied time-folding potions?" "Same." She swallowed. "Apparently they reviewed my quantum potion thesis after it went public last month. They're offering a position in their Paris laboratory. 1-year sabbatical, stipend, housing, everything." Damian's eyebrows rose. "That's incredible." Quincy hovered closer. Prestige ranking of Prism Guild, 98 out of 100. Average acceptance rate, 3%. Hazel twirled her fork in the syrup. "I applied 4 years ago and never heard back. Honestly, forgot. Now they want me to start in 3 weeks." Damian set his fork down gently. "How do you feel?" "Excited, terrified." She chuckled. "I always imagined if they called I'd pack in 10 minutes, but now, the timing." Damian reached across, lacing their fingers. "Whatever decision you make, I'll respect it." Hazel ran her thumb over his knuckles, heart snagging on the weight of possibility. Before she could reply, Quincy's tone changed, higher, urgent. "Alert. Social channels trending. Video tag billionaire bewitched. Playback?" Damian frowned. "Play." Quincy projected a translucent screen above the counter. A shaky phone recording from Echo Lounge filled the space. Damian on stage, microphone clasped, belting the boy band ballad off key, while pointing to Hazel. Captions screamed, "Damien. Slate under spell?" And below that, commentary scrolled fast. "I knew that witch was too shiny for him. Check the love spell glow. Rich dudes will fall for anything cute." Hazel's stomach plummeted. Damian's face paled, but his exhale was calm. "Well, that's out." "I'm sorry," Hazel blurted, pulse racing. Memories of photographers gawking at her purse, Corinne's catty remark, all compounded into a lump. "They're going to use this to say I manipulated you." "Then I'll set them straight." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not hiding." Quincy projected a snippet from a gossip panel. A pundit speculating that Damian was under an enchantment if not a love potion. Hazel's lungs constricted. "I should issue a statement too," she whispered, "and tell them I'd never." Damian shook his head. "Let me handle the press first. You focus on your work. If they see me confident, the narrative shifts." "But," he stood, kissed her forehead. "Hazel, I'm not ashamed of loving you. If the world needs proof, it's my choice. I'll give it." She stared at his steady gaze and felt both uplifted and terrified. "What if they don't listen?" "Then we try again tomorrow." He grabbed his phone. "Quincy, set up a live press Q&A in 2 hours." Quincy blinked amber. "Event scheduled. Potential media reach high." Damian stroked Hazel's hair. "Eat another pancake. You'll need sugar while you watch me become a flashy romantic headline." She forced a smile, but fear churned. As Damian dressed in business attire, navy suit, crisp white shirt, Hazel collected dishes with numb hands. Sir Scribbles sensed her mood and drew a shaky frown face, sliding it toward her. She tucked him inside the notebook before tears could fall. Damian emerged, adjusting his cuffs. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," Hazel said, voice trembling. "You need honesty, which you have." He cupped her cheeks. "Still, I want your wish." She exhaled. "Luck then. All of it." She kissed him, tasting syrup and nerves. He left with Quincy escorting, promising to beam the stream. Alone, Hazel paced the loft. What if it all spiraled? What if Prism Guild learned about the scandal and rescinded their offer? Or worse, what if Damian's board forced to leave? She pressed palms to her eyes. Sir Scribbles squeaked softly. Hazel pulled him out. He sketched a superhero cape on Damian with a sparkle emblem. A vibration buzzed. New email. Hazel opened it. Prism Guild's formal parchment digital hybrid scroll shimmering with gold runes. Invitation reiterated. Contract attached. Deadline for acceptance, 48 hours. She pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead. 12 months in Paris. Labs full of star extraction tech. Mentors she idolized. Versus her chaotic, uncertain, overwhelming new love. A year apart could break them. But declining might mean passing on a dream she'd nurtured since childhood. She poured black coffee, no sugar, paced until Quincy's holoscreen bloomed in midair. The press conference began. Damian stood behind a podium at a sleek co-working studio, Leora at his side. Cameras flashed. Hazel clutched her mug, heart hammering. Damian spoke plainly. "The video circulating of me singing last night is real. The enthusiasm is real. The love behind it is real. I was not under enchantment except the humankind. Hazel Sparks is an extraordinary innovator, and I am proud to know her, work with her, and love her." Reporters peppered him. Did she use spells? Did she damage investor confidence? Damian answered firmly. "I'd let her enchant my entire board, because they could use more imagination. But for the record, no love potion, no mind control. Just mutual respect that surprised us both." He pivoted to his new initiative. A scholarship for young magical scientists, bridging tech and spellwork. Leora outlined pilot programs. The feed chat exploded with applause emojis, heart icons, marriage proposals for Damian. Hazel sagged onto the sofa, tears pricking. When the conference ended, Quincy's voice chimed in. Sentiment across social platforms has shifted from skepticism to romantic enthusiasm. Top hashtag, couple goals. Hazel laughed through tears. He did it. Yet anxiety lingered. If Damian weathered a scandal created by her presence once, could he handle another? She glanced at the Prism Guild letter on the counter, runes glinting invitation. Maybe leaving would protect him, give him space. Sir Scribbles hopped onto the letter and scribbled a broken heart. Hazel swatted him away. Not helping. Afternoon sunlight angled across the lab, catching dust motes. Hazel tried cleaning but ended up standing motionless, letter in hand. She imagined nights in Paris labs, swirling star dust across crucibles, isolated but brilliant. She imagined Damian at board meetings, missing her jokes, staring at dull color palettes. Tears blurred her vision. Footsteps thudded on the stairs. Damian burst in, jacket slung over one shoulder, cheeks flushed from adrenaline. Hazel brushed tears away. "Press conference success," he announced, arms wide. She forced a smile. "You were amazing." He wrapped her in a hug. She melted into his scent. Coffee, cologne, courage. When they parted, Damian noticed the letter. "Prism Guild?" Hazel nodded, throat tight. He scanned her face. "Congratulations." "Deadline is 48 hours. "That's soon," he said softly. "Too soon." She stepped back, crossing arms. "You need calm now, not more chaos." "I need you," Damian said. "And I need dreams." Her voice cracked. "What if they don't mix?" "Then we build new dreams," he replied instantly. or we find a way for them to overlap. Hazel shook her head. The guild is in Paris. Year-long sessions. Non-negotiable. Plenty of flights to Paris. His tone stayed calm, but his eyes flickered with worry. We can handle distance. Can we? She hugged herself. Maybe you deserve normal. He laughed, raw. Hazel, I'm allergic to normal. She bit back a sob. Damian, you're perfect. I'm fireworks in a broom closet. He reached, trying to take her hands, but she pulled away. Let me think, she said. Please. Pain flashed across his face, then resigned understanding. I'll be downstairs. Call if you need me. Hazel watched him go, heart fracturing. Sir Scribbles hopped onto the counter, nuzzling her elbow. She stroked his spine. Quincy drifted near, voice gentle. Emotional turbulence, high. Probability of rash decision, 63%. Hazel whispered, I can't choose wrong. Sometimes right and wrong are constructs, Quincy replied. Better to choose honestly. She sighed. Let's go upstairs. They climbed to the rooftop garden where twilight spread purple and gold. Hazel flopped onto a weathered bench. Quincy hovered silently until she spoke. When I was 13, she murmured, I wrote Prism Guild letters every month. I thought if they accepted me, I'd know I mattered. Now I do matter, but differently. Quincy pulsed. Value is not static. She nodded, tears slipping. I thought ambition meant leaving. Now ambition includes staying. The orb dimmed in sympathy. Hazel stood, spreading her arms to the breeze. I need clarity. She gathered ingredients from potted herbs, moon daisy petals, frankincense resin, a feather from her luck raven perched by the planter. She placed them in a small clay bowl. Sir Scribbles hopped to the edge, quill ready. Hazel whispered, Quincy, record intent. The orb pinged. Hazel spoke aloud, voice firm. I choose to follow love that lights my work, not dims it. I choose partnership, challenge, and magic grown together. She ignited the resin with a tiny spark from her fingertip. Pale smoke rose, curling into heart-shaped spirals that dissolved into stars. Sir Scribbles sketched the scene, scribbling Hazel plus Damian equals infinity. Hazel smiled through wet lashes. She drew the Prism Guild letter from her pocket. Not now, she said, sliding it into the flame-proof bubble. It smoldered slowly, curling to ash without heat or smoke, runes fading like last notes of a song. Wind carried the ashes upward, scattering them into twilight. Hazel inhaled, chest lighter. Quincy hovered. Choice charm complete, integrity confirmed. Hazel's heart pounded with relief and hope. Below, footsteps ascended. Damian emerged, worry etched on his face. He saw ashes drifting and froze. Hazel stepped forward. I made my choice. Damian hesitated on the rooftop threshold, jacket flapping in the wind like a half-raised flag. Hazel could see nerves tightening his shoulders, see relief flicker when he realized she was alone, not mid-flight to Paris. She stepped toward him, ash still drifting from her spell bowl. He studied the dying wisps. That looked final. It was. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. I burned the offer. Shock crossed his face. Hazel, that was your dream. I thought it was, she said, fingers twisting together. But I realized my biggest breakthroughs happened with you next to me, not alone in a lab on another continent. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. I didn't want to be the reason you gave it up. You aren't the reason, she said firmly. I am. Because the life I want includes rooftop dumplings, karaoke disasters, and someone who believes chaos can be beautiful. His eyes softened, but uncertainty lingered. Are you sure? When excitement fades, when the day-to-day hits? Hazel stepped closer, catching his lapels. When day-to-day hits, you'll alphabetize my potion rack, and I'll slip star petals into your coffee. We'll make our own guild right here. Light flared in his gaze like someone struck a match behind his irises. You're certain? I picked certainty 3 minutes ago. She glanced at Quincy, who hovered like a patient witness. Choice confirmed, right? Quincy emitted a small triumphant trill. Integrity confirmed at 99.9%. Margin of error associated with human hormones. Damian laughed, relief breaking into a grin. Quincy approves. That's basically a cosmic thumbs up. He reached into his pocket. I wanted to wait until I knew you'd stay, but since we're here... He produced a slim wooden box. Hazel's breath lodged. Damian opened it to reveal a charm bracelet strung with tiny crystal links, each holding a miniature symbol, a microphone wrought in silver, a teacup painted in shimmering glaze, a floating dumpling nestled in gold mesh, a sparkling potion flask, and a star cut from mirror quartz. Hazel's eyes stung. You made this? With some instructive sarcasm from Quincy, yes, he said. Each charm is a crumb on our trail. I thought we could add one for every catastrophe and victory ahead. She lifted the bracelet, the charms chimed softly. It's perfect. Damian fastened it around her wrist. The quartz star caught the rooftop lantern glow, scattering faint rainbows on their hands. Sir Scribbles hopped from her pocket and excitedly scribbled a duplicate of the bracelet, labeling each charm with comic book sound effects. Karaoke boom, tea swoon, dumpling drift. Hazel snorted. Damian hooked a finger beneath her chin, tilting her face. So, Hazel Sparks, non-guild witch of my heart. Your heart is a guild in itself, she interjected. Then I hereby induct you as permanent co-founder. He kissed her, slow and sure. This time no doubt whispered in the back of her mind. No fear of potion residue or misaligned fate. Just warmth, wind, and the taste of shared future. Quincy dimmed the rooftop lanterns to a soft halo. The vines lining the roof trembled, budding sudden silver blossoms. Hazel's subconscious magic reacting to pure emotion. Damian drew back, breathless. Did you just bloom the night? She laughed through tears. Maybe. He brushed cheeks still damp from crying. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for letting me. She twirled the bracelet. The charms shimmered. We still need one last charm to mark today. I have an idea, he said. He pulled a slender wand-shaped device from his jacket. Leora lent me a prototype nanoprinter for enchanted alloys. Said it last night. He pressed the tip to Hazel's palm. A soft musical hum sounded. When he lifted it, a minuscule copper gear lay on her skin, engraved with 2 interlocking initials. Hazel's throat closed. For the mechanism we build together every day, he said quietly. She placed the gear on the bracelet, the links rearranged themselves to accept it, sliding into elegant symmetry. The bracelet glowed once, sealing. A cool gust swept across the rooftop, fluttering Hazel's dress. She leaned into Damian's warmth. Far below, car horns and distant sirens stitched the city's soundtrack. But up here, silence reigned, except for their heartbeats. She rested her head on his shoulder. Are you truly okay with the publicity storm I blew into your life? I'm better than okay. He laced his fingers through hers. Investors love a redemption story. They think I became relatable overnight. She snorted. Relatable billionaire, that's an oxymoron. He winced in mock pain. Ouch. But maybe a little true. Honestly, if the fallout gets rough, we'll handle it. One press conference at a time. Hazel looked out at clumps of starlit clouds. And if someday I want to reapply to Prism Guild? We'll find a way. He kissed her hair. Part-time fellowship, remote portal labs, a 6-month stint together in Paris, whatever. I won't let distance scare me. Hazel felt her chest expand with something vast and light. She squeezed his hand. Deal. A sudden burst of music wafted up from a neighboring rooftop. Someone's speaker playing a slow jazz number. Damian straightened. May I have this dance? There's no floor, She laughed. There's sky. He pulled her into an easy sway. She draped her arms round his neck, moving in small circles. Sir Scribble sketched them as swirl lines with sparkles at their feet, labeling the doodle rooftop waltz. Hazel's bracelet chimed each time their steps shifted. Quincy rotated, projecting faint starlight patterns around them so the roof felt like a private ballroom. The silver blossoms glowed faintly rosé. Hazel rested her cheek to Damian's chest, listening to the steady beat. The world melted to rhythm and cool night breath. When the song faded and distant applause rose, some other group cheering the skyline, they stopped, forehead to forehead. We should go inside before we freeze, Hazel whispered. Can't risk you turning into a star popsicle, he agreed. Downstairs they made cocoa thick with marshmallow constellations. Hazel added a drop of cinnamon wish tincture. They curled on the couch under a patch quilt. Sir Scribbles settled on the coffee table and drew cartoon marshmallows, roasting themselves happy. Damian sipped cocoa. Do you think Quincy will ever approve of us completely? Quincy floated above the cocoa pot, humming. Approval rating currently 87% and incrementing as you continue not to combust. Hazel laughed. We'll reach 90 by New Year's. Sir Scribbles scribbled 90% in bubble letters with confetti. Damian clinked his mug against hers. To incremental magic. To everyday spellwork, she replied, sipping. Tomorrow I have 2 potion orders and a lecture at the community college. I'll label ingredients, Damian said, after I finish rewriting that scholarship outline. Leora's already drafting budgets. Hazel watched him, awe warming her chest. I love seeing you excited. He shrugged sheepishly. Turns out mixing tech with magic is addictive. They talked plans until cocoa cooled. Weekend visits to Damian's childhood butterfly meadow, converting part of Hazel's greenhouse into a community mini-lab, integrating Quincy with Damian's corporate AI for philanthropic outreach. Each idea felt less like a dream and more like blueprint. Hazel set her mug aside, curled tighter into Damian's side. If Sir Scribble's wedding doodle ever came true, she mused, would you prefer glitter invitations or sonic holograms? Damian pretended to consider. Both, plus edible confetti, and Quincy officiating. Scary thought, Hazel teased. Quincy's lights flashed. Ordination protocol available for upgrade. Damian laughed. See? It's destiny. He kissed Hazel's temple. But no rush. We're writing this in starlight ink. Slow burn. Hazel yawned, bracelet chiming softly as her wrist relaxed across his chest. She closed her eyes, letting his heartbeat lull her. Sir Scribbles drew a pair of Z's and rolled onto his back. Damian whispered, Good night, Hazel Sparks. Night, Damien Slate, she murmured. Quincy dimmed the loft to velvet darkness, leaving a faint meteor shower projection on the ceiling. Tiny silver streaks crossing perpetual twilight. Hazel listened to them whoosh silently and thought for the first time in years that every part of her life finally moved in the same beautiful direction. The next morning dawned bright and cloudless, as if the sky had cleared space for whatever came next. Hazel stirred first, blinking at the pale streaks of sunlight that striped the living room couch. Damian lay half on his back, half turned toward her, hair even messier than the night before. A marshmallow clung to his collar like a badge of honor. Hazel propped herself on an elbow and flicked the marshmallow away. Wake up, boardroom crooner, she whispered. He cracked one eye. If you ask me to sing before coffee, I might file a grievance. Coffee first, she promised. Sir Scribbles leapt from the coffee table, scribbling giant letters that read Coffee Now in wobbling ink. Quincy bobbed into view, already warming the kettle. Hazel rose, reaching to roll tension from her neck. She'd slept well, dreamless except for faint images of twinkling vines and distant butterflies. Damian stretched, then followed her to the kitchenette. Schedule review. 11 o'clock, Leora wants us to meet the education grant team. 1:30. I have a shortboard follow-up. 3. We visit the community college for your lecture. Tonight, stargazing at the little meadow outside town. He looked sheepish. I might have pre-ordered insect mesh nets and milkweed seeds. Hazel laughed. You're really leaning into the butterfly thing. It's a metaphor, he said, pouring coffee. Transformation, gentle chaos, colorful wings. She accepted a mug. You forgot messy chrysalis phase, some goo on the way to glory. I enjoy goo, he said, then winced. Poor word choice. Sir Scribbles scribbled goo, with excited exclamation marks, and made dripping doodles until Hazel nudged him. Quincy projected a small chart above the island. Nutritional needs, caffeine doses, suggested travel times. Hazel sipped coffee, surprised to realize the schedule didn't overwhelm her. Instead, it felt like collaborative choreography, magic and pragmatism sharing the same page. An hour later they were dressed, Hazel in high-waist jeans, a star-speckled blouse, and a cropped blazer that Quincy insisted screamed casual authority. Damian in a slate jacket. Hazel teased him over the color pun, and navy chinos. Sir Scribbles tucked into Hazel's tote, promising minimal squeaks during professional appearances. The education grant meeting took place in a sunlit glass newsroom inside Damian's downtown office building. Leora, sharp in a crimson jacket, greeted Hazel with a warm hug. So this is our mad genius. Good to finally work face to face. Hazel flushed. Most of my genius is organized chaos. That's the best kind, Leora said, leading them to a table where 3 young interns eagerly awaited. Charts displayed figures. Seed funding for public magical science labs, scholarship guidelines, pilot cities. Hazel listened as Damian opened with sincere remarks about bridging imagination and technology. Then he turned to her. You're the inspiration. Tell them how you learned to code spells while brewing tea. Hazel's nerves fluttered, but she caught Damian's encouraging nod. She spoke about Renaissance fairs, VR glitches, and accidental enchantments that taught her structured experimentation. Soon, the interns were jotting furiously. Leora beamed. After the meeting, while Leora prepped legal documents, Hazel wandered to the office window. The skyline shimmered. Damian joined her. You looked at home, he said, huh? Because you built the room for me. She replied softly. At least half, he agreed. The other half is yours. They signed preliminary papers, shook hands, and left the floor buzzing with plans. Outside, midday sun glared off glass towers. Damian hailed a rideshare drone, then paused when Hazel tugged his sleeve. I need a quick detour, she said. Potion delivery en route to the college, mind? Damian grinned. Your chaos chauffeur is ready. They wove through a weekend street market lined with vendors selling crystal trinkets. Hazel located a stall where an elderly witch named Mrs. Barashi waited for her memory boost tonic. Hazel traded the vial for a jar of citrus marmalade laced with serenity pollen. Mrs. Barashi winked at Damian. Take care of our Hazel. She's a rare bloom. Damian bowed. I intend to let her bloom freely. As they walked away, Hazel smacked his arm lightly. You charm old ladies too. Powerful demographic, he said. At the community college, Hazel's lecture filled a mid-sized auditorium. Students in hoodies and neon hair waved wands that emitted squeals instead of sparks whenever they practiced. Hazel demoed a simple quantum levitation charm using sugar packets and micro-antigrav runes etched in salt. The packets hovered, spinning gentle orbits. Damian, seated in the front row, watched with the same captivated expression he gave her rooftop spells. During Q&A, a shy student asked how to avoid blowing up their projects. Hazel said, accept explosions as data, which made Damian laugh loud enough to inspire a round of clapping. Class over, the professor begged Hazel to teach a full semester. She promised to consider, warning of glitter side effects. Outside, Damian took her hand. I love watching you light people up, he said. Feels a lot like how you light me up, she admitted. They stopped for lunch at a street-side bistro. Over herb-crusted flatbread and sparkling lemonade, Hazel's phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated. Damian nodded encouragingly. She answered. It was Verena Day, High Sorcerer of Prism Guild. Verena's voice was warm, curious. We heard you declined. We'd like to understand your reasoning. Hazel excused herself, pacing by potted palms while Damian paid. She explained she'd found purpose at home, bridging communities. Verena listened, then said, "Your path sounds groundbreaking. Prism Guild respects such choices. Our door remains open should circumstances change." Hazel thanked her, returning to Damian with an odd mix of finality and peace. Sir Scribbles scribbled a little settled stamp on a napkin. They caught a late afternoon train out of town, Damian eager to show Hazel his butterfly meadow. The car rocked gently, golden countryside unspooled. Hazel dozed on his shoulder, bracelet chiming softly each time wheels hit a track joint. At the small station, they rented bikes and pedaled a mile to a rolling field. Wildflowers spread like spilled paint, purple and yellow patches merging into summer green. Damian dismounted, breathing deeply. "Haven't been here in years." They walked the grass path to a clearing where milkweed plants swayed. No butterflies yet, season still early, but the promise of them lingered in the fragrant air. Damian knelt, placing a small plaque at the edge. "Future home of Slate Sparks, Pollinator Haven." Hazel read aloud, voice thick. "Did you just merge our names for a cause?" "We co-own a meadow now," Damian said. Sir Scribbles hopped out of the tote, drawing butterflies with heart-speck wings. Hazel laughed, tears cresting. She pressed a kiss to Damian's cheek. He turned, capturing her lips under open sky. Wind rippled wheatgrass and brushed their ankles. They sat on a fallen log, legs dangling, guardian trees rustling overhead. Quincy hovered, projecting flight path predictions for monarchs while recording directional audio of Hazel humming. Damian plucked a blade of grass, whistling through it. Hazel leaned against him. "Pretty soon your board will declare me a corporate asset." "They already do," he said, "asset codename Star Witch." She giggled. "Sounds like a breakfast cereal." "Or a spaceship," he countered. Dusk lowered, painting clouds in blush and gold. They biked back, train ride quiet. Hazel sketched business logos on receipt paper. Damian assessed budgets in his tablet, though Hazel doodled stars on the screen whenever he looked away. By evening, they were home, body-happy and rosy-cheeked. Hazel prepared roasted vegetable soup, while Damian repaired a squeaky cabinet door. Quincy rehearsed a lullaby playlist. Sir Scribbles flapped around, scattering napkins. Dinner conversation drifted from soup seasoning to future travel. Hazel said, "I want to show you the Ren Fair circuit. My mom still performs illusions with fake rabbits." "I will buy the largest turkey leg and cheer," Damian vowed. After dishes, Hazel layered blankets on the couch. They curled up, Damian strumming a soft chord progression on an old charmed ukulele that toggled between guitar and sitar tones. Hazel sang along, voice faint but steady. Quincy dimmed lights gradually to candle glow. Hazel rested her head on Damian's knee. "Every day since we met feels like a chapter. I worry the sequel won't live up." "We write volume 2 together," he said, brushing petals from her hair. "No publisher but us." Sir Scribbles held up a sign. "Bestseller already." Damian chuckled. "We've got endorsements." Night deepened. Hazel rose, lit a single moon-scented candle on her workbench. She prepared 2 mugs of rosehip calm tea infused with micro-constellation sugar crystals. The crystals dissolved into swirling galaxy patterns. She brought 1 mug to Damian. "Let's end tonight with another charm," she whispered. "Your choice charm was yesterday," he said. "What's tonight's?" "Continuation charm," she replied. "No fire, just intention." They stood opposite each other, tea steam mingling, Quincy hovering overhead to document. Hazel lifted her mug. "My life is brighter because you walked through a door you didn't have to open." Damian clinked his mug to hers. "And mine exploded into technicolor because you spilled a potion you didn't mean to use." "It was messy," she said. "It was perfect," he replied. They sipped. The tea swirled color from aqua to lavender. A gentle pulse of light spread across Hazel's bracelet. Quincy chimed approval. "Emotional resonance optimal." Hazel breathed deep. "Tomorrow you'll be in 3 meetings and I'll be knee-deep in cauldron cleanup." "Routine," Damian said. "And that's okay," Hazel answered. "Because the magic is here." She tapped her chest, then his. He caught her hand, kissed her knuckles. Here, too, he whispered. They set the mugs aside. Hazel traced the wristwatch-shaped tan line on Damian's arm. Time for bed. Big day again in 7 hours. He scooped her up bridal style. She squealed. Sir Scribbles raced ahead, doodling speed lines. Quincy shut lights behind them in a gentle wave. In the bedroom, daylight left only starlight from the projector. Hazel changed into an oversized astronomy tee, Damian into worn lounge pants. They slid beneath the quilt, bodies fitting in familiar shapes. Hazel nestled against him, head on his chest. His heartbeat drummed steady. "Thank you for the meadow," she murmured. "Thank you for not becoming a star popsicle." She smiled into his shirt. "If I ever question us again, remind me of dumpling drift." "I'll hold up the bracelet charm." Sir Scribbles perched on the dresser, drawing a final doodle. Hazel and Damian charging forward on a teacup airship, Quincy as the figurehead, butterflies trailing behind. Hazel spotted it and laughed softly. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow promised deadlines, emails, potion orders, unexpected glitter accidents, maybe even new scandals. But tonight, her world narrowed to the warmth of the man beside her, the hum of Quincy's standby melody, and the faint jingle of charms settling into place. Damian's lips brushed her hair. "Good night, Hazel Sparks, who chose me." "Good night, Damien Slate, who lets me choose every day," she whispered back. Outside, the city lived and glowed, unaware a witch and a tech billionaire had written a quiet promise under its stars. Hazel drifted into dreaming with no fear of potions or pressure, only anticipation for the next charm, the next chapter, the next laugh inside the beautiful, shared chaos they'd claimed as home.